And it says starting, so I guess it started the broadcast. So I'm going to go test the link and see if I see anything. I should just use another computer. So this is testing. Mic check 1 2 1 2.
Yeah, you see that live button up in the upper right corner? You on right now?
Yeah, I see it. I'm just trying to make sure that I see it on the actual live, the actual YouTube channel. That's what I'm trying to look for. So I'm on the channel and it's still saying, please stand by. Starting soon. So let me refresh and see if that does anything. I don't want to start until I see something. So mic check 1 2 1 2. Bam. This is testing. Mic check 1 2 1 2. So it should be some feedback if I was to keep that going. So I see myself, so that's fine. I wish the quality would be better in terms of the video. Am I like choppy and pixelated? Starting, so I guess it started the broadcast. So I'm going to go test the link and see if I see anything. I'm hearing someone's feedback. Should just use another computer. Is somebody playing it from the live? Testing. Mic check 1 2 1 2.
Yeah, you see that live button up in the upper right corner? You on right now?
I understand, but
yeah, I see it.
I'm hearing the feedback.
To make sure that I see it on the actual live, the actual YouTube channel.
You hear that?
That's what I'm trying to look for. So I'm
not
on
the
the
one
channel.
to hear.
It's still saying, please.
Yeah, that was you. That was you, Asar, feeding back. You have to turn off your YouTube. It happened to me. Peace, Brother Lee. How you doing?
Hey, peace, brother. How you doing? Peace.
We chilling, just building. I'm ready to listen.
All right, peace, Brother Lee.
All right. Hey, peace. How are you, brother?
I'm good.
Blessed. So okay, now I'm not hearing no feedback. So my question is, on my screen, do I look really pixelated? I look really pixelated right now to me.
Yeah, to me, you really you can see the pixels.
Turn it off real quick.
There's a function at the top right next to where you mute your mic. It's to the right. It looks like bars on the telephone. If you raise your bandwidth, I think it'll adjust the pixelation. If I'm not, because to have it all the way up to the right will make it HD or whatever.
Well, hell, that's what I got it on.
Oh well, I guess that's what we're dealing with.
Audio only, very low. Yep. Oh well. That's how to do for now.
You only pixelated because you probably got your screen really big. It ain't gonna be that pixelated on YouTube because it's a smaller picture, probably. But let's go.
All right. So yeah. So just like to welcome you, brothers, and anybody else that's listening. We don't really have a title for this. This is just some people getting together having a conversation. And so the title for the discussion, however, is economics, bootlegging, and the lack of support in the conscious community. And so they're kind of really like three different topics, but interrelated in itself. I guess I would want to do the economics, the full thing of economics, last, but probably segue into that by the bootlegging. So I guess I'll first start off with the lack of support in the quote-unquote conscious community, and how this conversation started was based on I forgot the brother's name, the brother who created the hidden colors. What's his name?
Tariq Shaheed or something like that, brother Tariq. Nasheed, yeah. Yeah,
Tariq Nasheed, and he posted probably like a day or so ago, maybe 2 days ago, a short video clip of him kind of getting to it with a brother who was selling his DVDs bootleg on Harlem 125th Street, in Harlem on 125th Street. And it just reminds me of, like, I don't know if y'all used to get the Ashra Kwesi DVDs back in the day.
Yeah, that's how I got it.
At the beginning, he would, try to, deter the bootlegging from people in the conscious community. And so this is something that has been going on for a while. And then, of course, there's a whole bunch of people that bootleg it. But, bootlegging is not anything new. But what got me, and I've heard this before in the past, was like some of the comments that were below his video. And some of them, stated in one way or another, basically that, he should be doing this for free and that he should give away, his product to spread the quote-unquote information. So, it brings up the question for those who have that belief system. Should those of us who are involved in the digging in the crates, so to speak, to use a hip hop reference, for information that may enhance the African or conscious-based community, should we do all of that work, spend all of that money, and then just give it away consistently, to the public without any kind of compensation, saying whatsoever, and I wanted to just get, a few folks from the communities, point of view, on that, and then kind of segue into, what are the fundamentals of economics, and what do we seem to be missing, in our barbershop discourses, on this particular type of topic. And so, if anybody want to start off with it, with whatever y'all think, y'all can go first, and we can just chime in. It's just a loose conversation, so it's some brothers and a sister's supposed to come in a little later, chopping it up. So if anybody has something in mind, feel free. If not, I'll continue.
Well, I don't think the bootleggers are going to stop. I mean, I can remember sneaking in the movie theaters in the 80s, trying to catch a movie, taping off the radio. I think it's just part of our culture. And until our consciousness change as a group, that's just gonna be part of the issue. I don't think we're gonna be able to stop it.
All right.
Yeah, nor are we the biggest bootleggers.
Peace.
You know what I'm saying? That started back with.
Hold on. Is brother? What's the name? Was talking. We'll go to you, brother Lee. After
Okay. I just was saying. I think it started, with the moonshine and what have you. We needed some liquor that we couldn't
That's
get.
what I was going to say.
Yeah, exactly. And then now the majority of the real bootleg products, if they doing high price European stuff, that comes from China. You know what I mean? Like if you want some fake Gucci or some fake Louis Vuitton. So there are actually industries set up behind bootlegging. You know what I mean? And it actually even goes into the political scheme of things. If you trip off how China always bootlegging European stuff and selling it to Americans, you know what I mean? It gets a little bit above our head. But personally, since I sell music, I felt, we were some of the people who took the biggest hit from the digitalizing of our music, which made it easier for people to access your materials. For instance, I know you feel the same thing, being an author, and when you press up an ebook, as soon as you sell one ebook, you susceptible to bootlegging. So it'll be hard for us to control. One thing I had to do was just consider that a portion donated towards promotions. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I see. So, like I remember, it wasn't too long ago, a story came out that China actually bootlegged a whole Apple store. Now I know about bootlegging purses, bootlegging clothing and things of that nature. That's the reason why Carl Kanai back in the day created the metal. Like if you remember the Carl Kanai jeans from for anybody who's 90s kids or 90s teens, so to speak. he developed a metal plaque with his signature on it, to put on his jeans to deter, the bootleggers, because it costs money, to get those metal plaques and then to sew them on. But yeah, but back to the China, they bootlegged the whole Apple store, so people were coming into China thinking that they were at a legitimate Apple store, like they had it designed the whole way and everything, and come to find out it wasn't a legit store. And so we know that there's levels of bootlegging, far beyond what some brothers on 125th, are capable of at this current moment. But what gets me is, okay, well, in the case of China, in bootlegging, American high-end products or even low-end products, that's one thing. But it's people that's quote-unquote in the conscious community bootlegging other conscious, people, individuals that are, a part of that community that's trying to build, bootlegging their stuff with the excuse that, we need to get this information out to the public. And so, I guess, what is the ethical codes, for people who be talking about Ma'at and all of this other kind of stuff, and then to be unma'atic in bootlegging, people's items, because, bootlegging in essence is stealing. And so if you are a person who claims to be of the to be ma'atic in terms of your character and lifestyle, how are you being ma'atic by stealing, someone's intellectual property and selling them without due compensation? Now, you can work it if
Well,
you're.
if I may, brother.
Go ahead.
Yeah, it seems like America was built on bootlegging. The brother Jonathan was talking about the moonshine and how the Sicilians and the mobsters and the Jews got together until eventually they had to legalize it. We all know that Africans were stolen property pretty much from their land, and America was built on their backs, and all the intelligent designs they had was stolen. So one, I would say that stealing and bootlegging is a very American thing. But as far as somebody that say they're conscious and therefore African economics, at one point you decide to become un-American and more African and not steal from your brothers.
Exactly. So how do we build, the economic infrastructure that we say that we need in order to, elevate our community, and the very ones who are supposed to be the vanguards of this type of consciousness and behavior are the ones, I'm not saying all of them, but, there's a few that's supposed to be doing that, are the ones who are doing the bootlegging, off the bat. And so, one thing that I notice is that a lot of us, when we're teaching this information, we're teaching information in terms of what, when, and why, but we don't have an equal amount of discourse on character development, within those traditions. And so, like, I'm a practitioner of the spiritual system of the Yoruba people, commonly called Ifa. And Ifa technically is the divination aspect of the spiritual tradition, but for the sake of discourse, Ifa, the Yoruba spiritual tradition. And so one of the things that is kind of hammered home the whole time is that, it's always about Iwa Pele, or gentle character and good character, Rere Pele, and that, your blessings come when you are of good character and you do right by people. And so this kind of consciousness, people seem to skip, when we're talking about the 42 admonitions of Ma'at, so to speak. And so they forget all of these 42 declarations, not declarations of, it's really broken up into two things. You had the declarations of innocence, and you had the the Declaration of Virtues. And so the declarations of innocence for the deceased who are in the halls of Ma'at, what they are being able to confess is that they have not done something. And then the Declaration of Virtues are saying what they have done. And so if we were to go to the Hall of Ma'at, and we are of the true Kemetic tradition, you know, can you say, I have not stolen? You know, and can you say that I have supported, you know, my brother, you know, in his times of needs, or, you know, things of this nature, you know, because there's things in there like I have not robbed, you know, a widow, or I have not, you know, taken food out of someone's mouth. And so if we update that, you know, in 2014, you know, language, you know, if we in the halls of Ma'at, we can say I have not bootlegged someone else's intellectual property, which would be equivalent to I have not taken food out of someone else's mouth. And so, you know, any other thoughts? Anybody else who hasn't spoken?
Right, I just add in Umoja, Ubuntu, and we begin to think that we are, I am because we are because I am. We are a collective people. I won't steal from somebody if I believe that I'm part of that same person.
Mm-hmm.
That a part of an organization, that we're all in this together. Right now, this is my problem with the conscious community. It just seemed like a bunch of individuals expressing themselves. They're not trying to be unified in no type of way. And I know that's going to come in time, but as we begin to organize, as we begin to unify with each other, we promote that, man, if I steal from this guy, I'm actually stealing from myself.
Exactly.
If we have that type of consciousness, I think that those type things will go away over time as we change our consciousness.
Now,
I think that we should set a at what point.
go ahead.
At what does it become stealing? Let's say, just for argument's sake, I buy a DVD and I make a copy and I share with my man, and he makes a copy.
You there?
And he makes a copy. Is that all right, or is it wrong if I label it for sale and I go out for?
Well,
I'm not sure if you heard that or not.
I just want to say, for matters of law, it's as legal as soon as you duplicate it for your friend, because you're breaking the copyright. You don't have the rights to copy it. You know what I'm saying? So you copied it for your homie. We know that no one prosecutes dubbing a CD tape, or that's the same as when we use the dub tape. So we really, as people in the industry, don't get too upset when people do that. But legally, you're not supposed to duplicate a CD or a DVD. You know what I'm saying?
But you do have the right to make a copy, a backup for yourself.
Yeah, you're right. Correct.
You can't, technically, you can't, you know, make a copy and just give it away, at least without some kind of agreement with the people who created the intellectual property. You know, and so I you know, on that's kind of that gray area, you know, there in terms of morals. But I think it's more clear cut as soon as I make a copy and then I go and sell it at a reduced cost and not give, you know, the proper ratio of monies back to, you know, the originator of the product, you know, and so there's the. I'm reminded, y'all seen the movie Transformers 3, the one that just came out, or Transformers 4, whatever the one that just came out. You know how at the end of the movie, you watch to see if they're going to show some hidden, you know, some kind of preview or whatnot into the next film. Well, they did that for the latest Transformers, and as the credits was rolling up, you know, at the bottom when it was about to end, there was kind of a comment that said, you know, this film created, I think, 150,000 jobs just to do that film. And, you know, like it made me reflect on this topic, you know, here, because I think they're trying to appeal to the hearts of people who try to bootleg, or people who want to see the film but not go through the main channels to see it. You know, probably try to get a bootleg version to see it for free online without going to the movie theater or something to this nature. Not keeping in mind that just this product here creates so many other opportunities for people to live in the community. And so when you think about a movie, think about it. You got to pay cameramen, you got to pay soundmen, you got to pay lawyers, you got to pay the actors, you got to pay the screenwriters, you got to pay the people who advertise, you got to pay the people who do the graphic design and advertise. Depending on what kind of movie you got the 3D folks, you got the you know, people who just come up with the general design concepts, and then you got the motion, you know, folks who do, you know, who do the 3D. You know, so if you ever see a 3D, you know, production go down, there's the people who are doing the motion, you know, for them. You know, you got the people who program and create code and stuff for the movies. It's a whole bunch of people who are eating off this film, trying to create a product that they hope, you know, that they can put together and that the people will support, so that they make enough profit that it will encourage them to do this process again. So if you're able to do that process again, you get to rehire those folks to do another movie, and thus, you know, the money keeps circulating. And so that's something that people don't get. So when you're watching Hidden Colors, you know, there's so much more that goes into that. Don't forget the hotels where people had to stay at. You know, the purchase of the microphone and editing software and computer products and things of this nature that they had to purchase. And so, you know, don't forget all the time. You can't get that time back, you know, putting in the work for these kinds of products. So, you know, even you know, the Hidden Colors or something like that is on a smaller scale than what we see, you know, as it regards a Transformers. It still has a similar process, you know, because he still had to pay for, you know, plane tickets, you know, maybe some transit tickets, you know, to get to certain places. Maybe he had to purchase some meals for folks, you know, that get in there. So he had to pay a whole bunch of people along the way, you know, probably had to compensate some people just for being in the DVD, you know, and then for someone to make a copy and then sell it without giving him the money, because, you know, the people who are bootlegging aren't going to take the time to create another version or another film. So that's something that we have to keep in mind as well. They're not going to create another film. They're not going to go through all of this, go through all of these steps to make another film for the people and invest that money. And so they're just pocketing it, you know, and you know they're not going to pay no taxes on it, you know, because it's bootleg. So they ain't reporting this, so they're not pumping, you know, tax money back into the community, unless they buy something. It's just a general tax on the product in which they buy. But what we mean is, like, you know, like if you own a home, for instance, and you bootlegging and you don't report this income because you're paying you cash, then, you know, that money doesn't go into your school system or something to this nature. It's like it's so much that is involved in the economics that we keep missing the main objective, you know, besides, of course, giving information, but be also creating financial opportunities, you know, for people to eat. And if they're allowed to eat, then of course they have to spend money, and so they're going to spend the money back into the community. But if they're not getting money, they can't spend money into the community. And so that's what bootlegging in of itself does, you know, is rob people of those opportunities. So, you know, anybody else got something to say?
I agree. You can hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, definitely. You know what I'm saying? And to this point, it affects us so much that now we're starting to consider bootlegging it even what we consider manufacturing costs. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, well, now I can't afford to pay all of this stuff for production and manufacturing if I'm only going to receive a percentage of my own returns. Due to, I mean, let's just look at the music industry for a perfect example.
All
It's
right.
hard for independent artists. Well, we used to could easily crack 20, 30,000 units off an independent record. That really don't happen though. I'm talking about independent artists. If you, because you getting 10 times the money, so 20,000 units is good. You know what I mean? But that don't typically happen anymore. It's hard unless you're almost into a mainstream facility. So nowadays, people are downsizing their operations because of how hard bootlegging has affected us.
Hmm. So, okay, now let's. Oh, I'm sorry. Somebody's about to say something.
I mean, do we think that there is a solution being with computers and technology constantly advancing? Do we really feel there's a solution to that? Even Tariq Nasheed, he went to maybe one block in one neighborhood, but there's a whole lot of people he won't do that to, and there's a whole lot of people he can't reach. So I
Yeah.
mean, is there really a solution? Can we really do anything but say, "Hey, brother, you're not practicing"? What can we really do?
Um. I mean, the simplest solution, of course, is education and creating a certain collective value set. Now, that's going to. I mean, it's simple in terms of offering a solution. It's the most hardest thing to do. However, especially in our communities, especially since we're so spread out, we have different ideologies. You know. And that plays a role. Uh, and I remember, like, what was the book? Hold on one sec. It's a book called Tribes. I'm trying to find it. Here we go. Uh, just so that people can see, if they can see, it's a book called Tribes by Joel Kotkin. It looks backwards on my screen. I don't know if it looks regular on your screens, but it's Tribes again by Joel Kotkin. And basically, it says, well, the subtitle is How Race, Religion, and Identity Determine Success in the New Global Economy. And one of the stories in here, well, the basis what his research revealed is that there's basically 5 so quote unquote tribes that are prepared to run and control kind of industry in the 21st century. These are the ones who are able to be the big players in the 21st century. It was actually the 20th century when he wrote this, but the 21st century fundamentally is what he's talking about. And he said that these 5 groups were the Chinese, the Japanese, the Indian in terms of Indians, the British, and the Jews. And he gave certain characteristics about these groups collectively that he noticed when he was doing his study that would allow them to, be the major players in the near future, what was then the near future. And so the first one was a strong ethnic identity and a sense of mutual dependence that helps the group adjust to changes in the global economic and political order without losing its essential unity. So it's a strong identity and a sense of mutual dependence on each other. 2, a global network based on mutual trust that allows the tribe to function collectively beyond the confines of national or regional borders. So they got people across the world that they network with. And so their consciousness isn't just local, it's a global consciousness. And the last one, number 3, is a passion for technical and other knowledge from all possible sources, combined with an essential open-mindedness that fosters rapid cultural and scientific development, critical for success in the late 20th century world economy. Again, it was written in the 20th century, which is in the 90s, but this applies to the 21st century. And so what I think is number 1 and 2, that I would have to find the story specifically in here, but there was a story in here when he was talking about the Chinese and when they came here to America and was setting up shop. And there was an article that was written in, I think, in the New York Times that was interviewing these Chinese, or these quote unquote Asians from, Chinatown. So they're trying to understand like how everywhere you go in the United States there's a quote unquote Chinatown. And so what's the psychology, what's the mechanisms that makes these Chinatowns so successful in all these major cities across the United States? And so some more questioning happened, and one of the respondents said something to the nature of that he would rather work 80 hours a week for someone who was Chinese at half the pay than to work 40 hours a week for an American, a white American, that would pay more, because he understands fundamentally what they're trying to build in the long run. And so I found that very interesting when I first read it. Again, it's in this book called Tribes. I got to find the exact location of it, but they're talking about the Chinese people. So they're broken up into chapters. So the British, the Chinese, Japanese, Indian, and the Jew. And so it's in the Chinese chapter. Chinese or Japanese, one of them. But anyway, and so we can see that strong ethnic identity and a sense of mutual dependency in terms of those major characteristics, helps to determine their success in the future. And so I see we're missing those two functions right off the bat. We don't have a strong ethnic identity to where black folks are even questioning whether they black now. And so, a quarter of us acting like we're Moors, another quarter we're the lost tribe of Shabazz, another quarter we're Hebrew Israelites, other ones it doesn't matter about color. A small portion of us are Africans. We don't have a collective, identity and culture. And then we don't have this sense of mutual dependency. We kind of lost it. We were forced to have this kind of mutual dependency when the laws were in place to force us to be bottlenecked into our own neighborhoods. And so since they wouldn't let us in their neighborhoods and partake in the businesses and stuff there, we were forced to create our own and depend on each other for our collective goods and services. And so we fought for quote unquote civil rights. Integration happened. We then said the hell with black people, and of course we know what happened, after that. And so, in terms of that, getting back to that, what is the solution? I think fundamentally that's part of it. Now, when it comes to the technology aspect, I'm not sure. We would probably have to create, there's been steps, like for instance, in terms of Brother Jonathan mentioned ebooks earlier. Now, there's, for people who create PDFs, so to speak, with the Adobe suite, you can lock them and have them only read in, an approved, like have an account with an approved, Adobe reader, so to speak. So, two people couldn't be reading the same document at the same time, because every time you log in, to read it, it puts a lock on it, so to speak. But of course, with any kind of computer technology, hackers can break the cycle. So even if you have those measures, somebody, often finds a way to, to get in at it. And now with music, that's really kind of hard to say. And so, you'll probably have to, now create an industry to where really the tour is the big thing, to where you get to see the person live. which means fundamentally, which has been slacking. Like, I'm a big hip hop fan. I grew up in the golden era of hip hop, and so it was all about the live performance. Your live performance had to be liver than your CD. That's not the case nowadays. To where you go to a concert and it's really bland. Like I can't watch a Jay-Z concert. He just stands there in one little spot and raps, and he sounds just like he did on the CD. It's not worth going to. But if when it comes to something like that, that's something that we have to create that experience again to get people more live into the experience. But then again, some people can just bring the cell phones, record your concert, put it on YouTube, and you can see the concert, without necessarily having to go and spend your money. So it's really going back fundamentally to the culture and the value system, of the people, and that because I remember, because I put on events all the time. Like if I gave a flyer, to a white boy, the first thing that he would say was, oh wow, if he liked the event, he'd be like, oh wow, this sounds cool. I'm gonna invite all my friends, and then and I would see them come to the event, and sure enough, he would have a posse with him. But if I passed this to a black person, especially one that I knew, the first question they're asking me is, can I get the discount? The white person just saying, oh, I'm gonna bring people and support. They're not asking for any discount or anything. But then the black person is always trying to get the quote unquote discount, and it's a severe discount. And it can't be like a 10% discount. It's damn near free, to get into the event or to the or whatever product or something to this nature. So, this stems back to our lack of understanding of what economics is. And why now that the marketplace will determine fundamentally the cost of your product or service. Like if it's really, really expensive, well, you have a certain market in mind. Certain people of a different market ain't going to be able to afford that or whatnot. But that can be all ironed out. But to the extent that any and everything that you do, no matter what the pricing is, it could be $10. Can I get a discount? Can I get it for $5? And I don't know if that's either collective memory, because in the marketplaces back in Africa, you haggle for prices, with the old school open market. So I don't know if that's that what do you call it, ancestral memory, so to speak. I don't know if that's part of it or whatnot. But what does it take for us to really understand, that if we want to build the kind of society for ourselves that we need to build, that we need to spend money with each other, and we need to spend that money in the same way that we would spend this money with anybody else, that we don't ask for discounts or to get it for free. Like I said, with the Tariq or with the movie situation, the bootleggers aren't asking their phone company service that is 20 times out of 10 owned by a white person to discount their services. They pay that every single month without fail. Same thing with their rent. Same thing with their water or food, groceries, or their technology. They want to get that computer, that flat screen TV, whatever. But when it comes to black products, it seems that the people of this mentality feel that the rules should be different. And so I mean, what is y'all take?
Yeah, I want to just go back with the you was talking about the Chinese, the Japanese, the Indians, British, those groups. Like you said, they all have an identity that they keep with each other. I did some business with this man from China in his community, and no matter what house I had to do some work for, I had to see that one man. If I had to do electrical work on 10 different houses, I still had to see that one man. He was the point of contact for everybody in that community. And I asked him, I said, why y'all do stuff like that? He said, it's part of our tradition. I'm the elder of everybody. So when something needs to get done, they come to me. But I'm bringing up, they trusted him to do that. And he was shady. Now, he would want his little cut. But the community still trusted him to do his part. And that's the same thing that we have to have. We have to have trust amongst each other when we do business, and have that, like you said, have that identity that when we do business, it's for our entire benefit. The entire people is going to benefit when we do business with each other. The community is going to grow when we do business with each other. It's education and it's culture.
That's what's up. I'm sitting here trying to test something out real quick. They have an app here that allows people to
Y'all ready?
hold on. I don't know. It's supposed to be a number, like for when people want to call in and join the conversation, but for some reason it's not connecting. Oh well. But yeah. I mean, hold on. Okay, it's still disconnected. So yeah, like that. That's interesting. But then again, I guess part of our issue is that we live amongst each other now, but we don't open up a lot of businesses there. And then I don't know, like it don't seem like outside of those of us who who are really truly dedicated to this consciousness community really value elders that way. And so I'm wondering, at our current state, could that happen? Like
Brother,
go ahead.
it seems like we suffering from low standards, from pettiness. I noticed with myself when I used to go up and down 125th Street, I used to try to bargain for books until one day somebody told me, an elder told me, no, you're gonna pay for this book what I asked you to pay for. The Barnes and Nobles, you can't haggle with them. Why are you trying to haggle with me? And I looked at him, and from that day on, I pay anything the book vendor asks. I think that black folks, we don't feel like our stuff is worth the same as anybody else's. When I try to just look at my own, in the past, the first thing I might try to do is get a deal, get a real deal. Like, you just like me. We both trying to get out the same situation. I know what you really pay for it. Hook me up. But I don't think we understand that in order for him to get in a better place, to eventually help me get in a better place, I need to pay what he's asking for. I think we need to trust each other. We need to do whole healing. I think we need to focus some more on healing and getting over not even liking each other. Getting over not liking being African and not liking each other. That seems to be a real big issue. Chinese people love being Chinese and they love clicking up together. We don't like that for some reason. When we do, we try to get back to the issue. How can we get to a point where we trust each other and we value each other as Africans? I think that's the issue.
Good word.
Yeah, I'm for those who know me, know that I have been researching and articulating for a number of years the fundamentals of culture and really trying to figure out what culture is. And I have a pretty good grasp of it, currently. And I conceived a few years ago, some years ago, actually, a number of years ago, what I call the African American Cultural Development Project. And
I see that.
Throughout all my research, listening, and reading some of the greats in our history, they've all hinted at the need for culture. but no one has ever proposed actually creating one. What has happened, with the exception of Cheikh Anta Diop, and that's where I really got the idea that, wow, we really could create culture. We really need to create one. And matter of fact, here's one of his books that helped me to really grasp this concept, and that is Black Africa: The Economic and Cultural Basis for a Federated State. It's his smallest book, and I think it's actually his most important book. And I say it's his most important book because this culminates really what all of his other books was about, fundamentally, and why he was so, like, people think that he was just trying to do a feel-good, the Egyptians were black type discourse. And that wasn't the case. What he was trying to do fundamentally was to show Africans that you are all related, that there's more commonality amongst you all than you think if you just do the knowledge. And here's the proof. And so because you have this common foundation in terms of language, in terms of subsistence strategies, in terms of ritual, in terms of religion, in terms of worldview, you have the basis to create a modern federated state that will help us to get out of the rut that we're in as a collective, in terms of Africa, the continent as a whole. And so he understood that we had to deal with the cultural piece first. And so, like, matter of fact, on page 25 of this text, there's one paragraph that says, "Nothing will do but that we make up for the relative ease of our liberation through an immense effort of political education and cultural formation. Otherwise, we may find ourselves opposing foreign nationalisms that are still expansive and inured to armed struggle with a mere folkloric nationalism, endowed only with the piebald local colors of our native woven fabrics." And so, Diop has a way of speaking. But with the key, phrase here is cultural formation. And so, like, if you go to the back of the book, he's not one just to talk. He gave a little 14 steps to African unity, starting on page 88. And one of them says, and it's really 15 steps. Hold on. Hold on. He says one of them is to restore, the number one is to restore consciousness of our historical unity, what I just spoke about earlier. And then the second one was to work for linguistic unification on a territorial and continental scale with a single African cultural and governmental language superseding all others. And so he brings up this, the point of creating an African culture. And this is why technically in certain discourses I argue that the African doesn't exist. There's really there's only one set of Africans, and that is the African American. We were the first ones to collectively call ourselves African and name our institutions African. We all spoke a single language, and we generally had a single culture. That is kind of divided now. But that's the problem with Africa and why they don't have a federated states yet, because they don't see each other as the same. That's why Cheikh Anta Diop had to write this book of Black Africa and do all that work he was doing to show them, to give them a basis. But he was doing this to create a new culture, a new continental scale African culture with a single language that they can speak to each other, to be the lingua franca of each other, so they can have that cultural unity. Because another thing that he mentions in this book is that there's no African, how should I say, no African tourism, so to speak. So you know, tourism dollars is a major uh, way to build an economy. And so you never hear people in Mozambique talking about, oh, I'm going to go to Nigeria for the summer. Or people in Senegal, I'm going to go to South Africa for the summer. You know, there's no inter-African tourism. And so, you know, we want to at least have the same thing even amongst African Americans. And, you know, so part of the African American Cultural Development Project is to have these tourist places that we can have, that we can visit each other and patronize each other's businesses from across the country when we visit these other states and things of that nature. But, you know, part of the African American Cultural Development Project is to create an African culture, because as y'all know, Amos Wilson has made the phrase, has coined the phrase that culture ultimately is a conspiracy. And when you think about that phrase, culture is a conspiracy, what does it mean to conspire to do something? It means that you have to think about it as plan. A conspiracy is a plan. Culture just doesn't evolve by itself just all willy-nilly. It just falls out of the sky or grows out of the ground. People like us have a meeting. We discuss what kind of human being and what kind of society that we want to create. And then we outline the steps necessary to create that, and then we go out into the community and execute. And so when we think about the white folks, the framers of the Constitution, you know, they didn't have a big mass meeting with everybody. They met amongst themselves, you know, a certain elite. And they got together and said, this is what the Constitution is going to be. We're going to separate ourselves from Britain. And then they went out and convinced everybody of their plan. And now you have the quote-unquote United States of America. It was just a few individuals who sat there, plotted, and planned how they wanted the country to be, how they wanted the culture to be, you know, in the future. And that's fundamentally what we need in terms of the African American community, I argue. And so that's, you know, the basis of the African American Cultural Development Project, to conspire the African American culture, to solidify and crystallize our values. And so part of the value set that we would have to implement is just what we're talking about here in terms of, you know, we don't support the bootleggers. You know, how wonderful would it be that a black person says, I'd rather work 80 hours a week at half the pay, you know, saying for a black person, than to work 40 hours a week for double the pay with a white person. How much more will we build our communities with that mentality? You know, but we would have to have a plan in place. We would have to have our value set in place. We would have to have our culture in place for that to be successful. You know, understanding that you're the first or second generation that's going to build up for the great-grandchildren, you know, what it is that we do. I think part of it is we want to have our shine now, and we don't want to work for that big project by starting off small. You know, I haven't talked a bit, so anybody else have anything to add?
Right, you right there. I'm studying a couple of books right now, and Kwame Nkrumah, he's the first president of Ghana and their liberation. But he talks about what is it to be a man? What's the difference between a real man and a boy? And one of the things, a man fights to control the resources of his people. He will sacrifice himself to get control of the resources of his people. A boy lives off the resources of other people. And that's just the difference. Are we willing to sacrifice, to do what it takes to get control of resources for ourselves?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a simple saying, but you know, it's difficult. It's a difficult task, because I speak to people, and the thing that I hear the most is, well, what are you offering? I'm making $70,000 a year. I'm living comfortably. Why would I do that? And I tell them, well, you're setting up foundations for your children and your children's children, that they control their own resources. They don't have to depend on somebody else, just like in Detroit. Yeah. You don't depend on another private corporation giving you water, you control the water sources yourself.
Exactly.
But me and Jonathan talked about it the last time we talked. Somewhere along the line, we lost that ideology. We lost that idea that we want to take control of our resources. We had it in the 50s and 60s, and then as we moved into the 70s and 80s, we got hypnotized into integration, and now we are where we are now.
Just
Piggyback on you and what the brother thought said, that we want to have our shine right now. And that means that we're not practicing some type of African spirituality. Knowing that
you're breaking up.
we want to have our shine. Just
You're breaking up.
Okay. Just the time of what you said brothers wanting to have their shine right now. It shows that they're not practicing African spirituality. You know that our ancestors are the shining stars and we're going to shine all the time if we get on board with this African thing. We lost that materialism. We once we accepted materialism, everybody wants to shine right now. That's like the death of a people. We don't have our African spirituality, you know, that we shine all the time. Our ancestors shine down on us as legacy. I think we carry on that.
You're coming in. Your audio's kind of choppy. I heard you for the most part, but your audio's choppy. Just for the record. Now, I think that you know, again, when I study African culture now, like, let me take a step back. There's certain cultural norms that are practiced that give people this sense of this need to invest and to give back. Now, a lot of us, you know, I'm not sure about everyone on this phone or on this conference call, but at least, you know, speaking for me, you know, when I came out of the church, you know, one of the first things in my mind was, you know, I ain't got to pay these tithes no more. And so, you know, not really understanding the fundamentals of what the tithes are supposed to represent. You know, now we understand that, you know, certain preachers want to take the tithes and you know, use it for themselves instead of, you know, saying helping the people. But it's this. I want to stick on the fundamentals of what the tithe is supposed to, you know, emphasize, and that is a reinvestment. That's an African thing. And so when I don't care whatever it is, if you go see any Babalawo, I can guarantee you that after your reading, he's going to require you to sacrifice something.
Yes, sir.
You know, yes, sir. I have not been to a Babalawo or done any kind of reading on myself that in the final analysis, you need to sacrifice, do this, you know, in order for to deter the situation in which you're in, or, you know, and to open up for the kind of blessing that you want. And so this sense of sacrifice is embedded in the system, the very system itself. And so when it comes to a quote-unquote conscious African American community, there's no sense of tithing. There's no sense of sacrifice. That isn't built into the culture. But then again, we don't have a consciousness culture. We just have an awareness of what the white man has done over the years and our recent and even our most distant history. We have a lot of information, but we don't have the value system and the character, so to speak, that, you know, that we don't have the culture that will allow us to do what we do. I want to kind of big up and promote a book from a good brother, Ezra Aharon, and it's called Sovereign Evolution. And it's called Manifest Destiny from Civil Rights to Sovereign Rights. Again, his name is Ezra Aharon, and the book is called Sovereign Evolution. And the whole book is written very well and has you, you know, critically thinking about, you know, developing sovereignty and what sovereignty looks like. and how we have a right as black people to be sovereign, to have some sense of sovereignty. And I remember, for instance, a conversation that Dr. John Henry Clark was having. And he said that basically, as a result of the transatlantic slave holocaust, we lost our ability to run the state apparatus. Meaning that if we was, left to our own devices on the continent, you were forced to kind of think of the society as a whole. But since we were enslaved here and we became more and more citizens, even to this day, we don't feel like this is ours. We don't think in terms of running a state. The education for the white boy teaches them how to run the state apparatus, how to be in control of the destiny of the country. And so they grow up with a sense of not having the country to fall on their watch. So they do what has to be done to maintain the system. And because we're not integrated into the system, we don't think in terms of state. And I think this is one of the reasons why we have this hard time, I guess, segueing into, not just bootlegging, but just finding a lot of support for a lot of the projects that we find ourselves involved in. Is because we don't understand statehood, we don't understand sovereignty. And and so we have for anybody who's anybody worth their weight in salt in the so-called conscious community, what our Bible is. This is Blueprint for Black Power by Dr. Amos Wilson. Like, if you don't have this book, if you haven't read this book, not even just have it, if you haven't read to into the 800s. That's right, it's more than 800 pages, almost 900 pages. But it's worth it. If you haven't read this, I can't really take you seriously. I understand why you do what you do or don't do what you don't do. Because, this book here, this is for the Black African-centered, this is our book. But, other communities have their books. Like I have one here, Islam for Islam. Islam's Climate for Business Success. This is by W. Dean Muhammad. This is the son of Elijah Muhammad. And so he written this, of course, way after he, left the Nation of Islam. And, this was 1995 that this book comes out. But it's all about how a Muslim, conducts business, has, what's the expectations of other Muslims during doing business with each other, the dignity of the individual and the dignity of business, plan for the future. I'm just reading some sections. Having a Islamic market, fulfilling lawful obligations, and of course, all throughout, he's going through his text of, the Quranic text to find support for the ideology of Islamic business community. And this is a future book that I plan on writing, and I had to wait some years to write it. I actually have, I just found it the other day, because I thought of this book way back in 2001 when I was an undergrad in college. And it was called My Business Philosophy. But of course, me being in college, I didn't have the consciousness and the experience to write the book. So I just put it on hold, for a couple of years. And I'm at the point now where I think I can write it. But to have something, and when I purchased this book back in in 2004, 2005, when I first bought this book, it really solidified for me that we need this something similar, but grounded in Ma'at. And so I've been researching Ma'at for a long time to really get an understanding of it, and I'm glad that Maulana Karenga came out with his book. And I've been able to add on it since then, from a linguistic perspective. But, that's the kind of stuff that we need in terms of a conscious community's, business that is grounded in actual African culture, so to speak. But anybody else have something to say?
Sorry, can you hear
I
me?
hear somebody coming in and out. Yes.
In and out.
State
Do
your
I need
name,
to get
brother.
another mic? Shezlu
I
Fatah
can hear you well.
Ahmed.
Peace, peace. Go
All
ahead.
right, all right. Yeah, I was just listening in to the build, and I definitely agree with everything everybody has said. Am I coming through clear enough?
Yeah, you good.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, but I know he was talking about Ma'at and keeping a balance. I mean, anybody who produces any material, they have a right to be compensated for and not to be unjustly nobody should be able to steal their art. But I know that we're in a capitalistic society now, more so, and I know we ran like a barter system back in our history, where I felt as though this was worth so much, and you had to give me, and then we could bargain or heckle about the cost. But I do believe in sharing information, um, not to make a profit, but to at least, if I've got knowledge from, like if I got one of your books, or say I got one of your, and a brother, wanted to listen to it or copy, and I didn't want to give it, and he didn't go on your site to burn it or to order it. I went ahead and burned it for him. I feel as long as I wasn't trying to make a profit, I'm just sharing the wisdom. And who knows, one day once I share that wisdom, this will buy your future uh, CDs or DVDs or books. And it's almost like promotion. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Now, you bring up a good point, and it has me thinking. I'm gonna pose this question to the panel. You know, why why do you think that people do not, like? Let's say that I wrote a book, and they don't want to pay for the book or the lecture or something to this nature, but they will not hesitate to go to a university and pay a university for them to teach them information. Like, I feel on some level that we do not view these things as investments in ourselves. I think part of the problem is that we just view it as information, just random information, and not information that is used to better ourselves, that will increase our value, in the marketplace. Because that's one of the reasons why you go to school, not only for just the general education, but to increase your market value. And I think that, for instance, if I fully read and understand Blueprint for Black Power, my market value should go up, especially if I implement, and I know how to implement and have implemented the strategies that are in this text. And so, what is y'all take, on the perception of the value of the information that is given by people in the conscious community?
I think one of the biggest problems is we're too individualistic.
Mm-hmm.
The more we unify, the more value is added. The value just increases the more we become organized. So instead of one person understanding the blueprint, you might
Mm-hmm.
have 50 people that understand it. Now that becomes there's more power in that, because now 50 people get together and try to implement the plan, understand it, as opposed to just one. I said it before. The conscious community is it's almost like is hip hop, where everybody have their own individualistic style. Somebody raps like this, and let's say Tupac, and then somebody comes after Tupac, and if they sound like Tupac, you say, "Oh man, you whack! You sound like Tupac. Get your own style." And they're bringing that into the conscious community, but we should sound alike in the conscious community. We should act alike. the more alike we are, the more value in what we're saying increases. It's going to be
Yeah.
unity, collectivism, communalism, all of that, capitalism. But as you were saying before, Asar, um, we have to have a sense of statehood, a sense of nationhood, of nation building. And you do that by thinking alike, at least in the building stages. Once we get the nation going, then we can break off into our individual ways. But we're far from that yet.
Hmm. I think that.
Now,
I'll go ahead. I'll let you speak. Go ahead.
I would just to add on that. I agree with what the brother was saying as far as sounding something alike, but there is, I'm sure there's slight difference. Just to touch on, I think what the question was saying as far as us having a lower value of ourselves. I think that goes back to how we've been conditioned. We've always gotten our things, going back in time as far as slavery, not going to Africa, but from slavery to America. We've always gotten our things from the oppressor or from the white man. And then it was seen to be that their stuff was good. When we tried to break into the capitalistic environment, because they didn't okay our stuff, we as Africans within ourselves would not buy our own or support our own products. We always went to someone else who we thought it was a better product. So we devalue ourselves, and we in turn give value to someone else's
Hmm.
product.
Now, for to kind of piggyback on Inyame's comment, in the chat room for those who are on the panel, I put a link to a discussion by a brother by the name of Diebede Francis Kere. He's from Burkina Faso, and he has a TED Talk. For those who are familiar with TED Talks, I don't know how to share a link outside of the group for those who are watching live. So again, I'm just going to give the title of his TED Talk, and so you can just go to TED.com and search for it. But it's How to Build with Clay and Community. Now, again, this is an African brother from Burkina Faso, and he's talking about how he came together to build a school in his native community, which is kind of, the old school rural village, kind of setting or whatnot in Burkina Faso, West Africa. The same place where, Dr. Malidoma Some and his wife Sabonfu Some come from. And what he did, a problem that he addressed in the talk was that, of course, Africa has this problem of brain drain. And I say to African Americans, we have this problem with brain drain too. Even though we still live, for the most part, amongst each other. But Africa is a different story. And so what happens is that Africans go get educated in European or American universities, and then they stay in Europe or the Americas and live out their lives, and their children, live here or there. And they don't bring this information back to help build their communities back in Africa. And so he didn't want to do that. And so what he went to school for was engineering. And so what happened is he got his education, came back to the community, and used his engineering know-how to help raise some funds and to help the community. The community actually itself built the school. Now keep in mind, in this community, they actually have a community. There's a sense of ID, an identity, with each other. and they built this school. You'll have to see the images of this school, just out of clay, but it's durable clay that won't wash away, with the rains or whatnot. And it's very, between modern looking in terms of its outside and things of this nature. Still kind of has a traditional inside, but it's just amazing what they were able to do as a community. So you'll see them all. They don't have any, tractor trailers or anything scooping up. They all doing this stuff by hand. They smooth out the floor from from rocks and make this smooth, shiny finish in an old school way, just pounding. Just like this, the men will come in for a while, do their thing, then the women will come in for a while, do their thing, singing while doing it. And so, later they build the school. And so, there's a part in the discussion where he talks about when he was little, he was like, between 8 and 10 years old, where every time he would come into the village to visit his parents during the summers, when he was getting ready to leave, because black folks, we got to say bye to everybody, all of the women would dig in their purses or their clothing and give him money to pay for his schooling that was not in the village. And he asked his mother when he was young, why do all of these women love me so much? And he said that his mother said that basically, and I'm paraphrasing here, that it's an investment in you, that they hope that you will get the kind of education needed to come back and help the community to grow. So they invested in him at a young age. So by the time that he got into college and graduated college, he felt a sense of obligation to come back and use his skills to enhance the community. And so that's what he did. But not only that, he taught the community some of his trade. And so now they have skills that they can find work and enhance their life. And so I encourage, people to really kind of look at that, that when you have time, it's about 20 minutes or less, that talk, and really kind of get a sense of what community looks like in real life and what you can do. And when I was listening to his talk, the first thing that I could think of was ancient Egypt, because it was this same kind of mentality that the collective came together for these large building projects. So when we talk about these temples and we talk about these pyramids and all of this other kind of stuff, and the agriculture, that's because the whole community benefited from it in some way or another. So they saw it as an investment in themselves. And so that unity part is very critical. But in the end, we have to have a plan. What exactly are we building? And so I think we need to have on some small scale, on a small scale, some project where a community comes together and builds something, some kind of institution, something where that community benefits. We do a story about it and have people to reduplicate that in other cities and other areas of town. Because my logic is that if people gain confidence when they're able to achieve certain stuff on a smaller scale, and the smaller scale allows them to gain the confidence to do something on a bigger scale. That's why with the African American Cultural Development Project, the first project is the Adinkra Project, where the community is going to come together and design and create our own sacred symbols. We can do something that small, then we'll move on to something a little bigger. And then from that on to the culture itself. So we have these smaller evidences of success, to where when we're asking them to get involved in a bigger project that takes more energy and more time, that because we have this track record on the smaller stuff, as a collective, when I mean the collective has a track record on the smaller stuff, that we won't think it's so big that it can't be done, when we're talking about the bigger project. And so that unity is key.
Now it's all.
Go
This
ahead.
brother says no again. Now, when you guys started out, did you give? I mean, not saying give, but I mean, did you work freely in the community to build a reputation and a relationship with surrounding individuals that you planned on helping or developing?
On some level, yes and no. Now, as a young person coming up, you got to pay your dues. So you got to be involved in some organizations. Volunteer and do this and that. I have a little bit of training. I mean, just growing up, in the black household, that should just kind of be standard. Your parents have you doing a whole bunch of stuff for no immediate benefit for yourself. You don't understand that these are character building things that when you get older. But in a more communal context, like I'm a member of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, and what people don't realize is that no one gets paid in Alpha. We have a national body, we have our headquarters, and the only people that get paid, from any kind of monies collected, are like the secretaries or whatnot who work in the primary office. Everybody else, the president doesn't get paid. Nobody gets paid. It's all volunteer. And so even when we was in college, when we're throwing these parties, when we're putting on these community service projects or whatnot, we're not getting paid for nothing. It's all to instill this concept of service, of volunteerism. But that's when you're trying to do something, for the community to an extent. But at the same time, if now, that was when you're just taking some time off of your regular schedule. But now if the community is asking for something that is your skill and trade, and they want you to constantly do it all the time for free, that's something different.
Right.
Go ahead.
Now, my second part of that would be, and we were talking about investment. Most of the time, now, other people or the community doesn't invest in individuals, or don't invest in our children. We end up investing in ourselves. So because we work so hard on ourselves, then we turn around and say to ourselves, now it's time for my compensation. Don't get that, paying your dues. If like not like yourself, you're talking about being an 8xA, or those that are part of community service groups. I call it service groups. They do good work. They raise money. They do funds. They help out, and that teaches. But sometimes a lot of these public schools, they don't even teach community service projects. You have to go to like private schools that will teach something like that. That keeps you connected, to an area or a community or a city or a town. But yeah, we don't when we invest in ourselves, we're ready to pay off our student loans, and we're ready to get paid. We're trying to get that money, and it's kind of a disconnect to the community. When we try to open up our businesses, we don't even know who. A lot of times we don't even know who our demographic or who we're trying to sell our products to.
And
And with that, let me just plug something real quick if I could. Is that all right?
Go ahead.
By trade or by field, information research, work for community college, but it's a 2-year college. And I just got the wild pick that somebody turned me on to this genre of music called Gaga. So I decided to create or organize a free concert
I'm sorry. I'm sorry to interrupt you. Can you say that again? You were kind of coming in and out. What was the title of whatever it is that you were saying? And go forward from there.
Oh, okay, by trade, I'm an information resource consultant. I work on computers
All
at
right.
community college. But I got a white hair, and I decided to organize a free conference for the lieu of the negative lyrics and the negative imagery that our community has been bombarded. You know, all the nation is being bombarded. What I did is I contacted Cyrock and Soul Messiah um, with their keywords. Of course, everything is negotiable, but I was able to raise the money to meet the number that I was given. Um, Partnership with a nonprofit. I've opened up my own school in my home, a tutoring school in my home. I just charge them $10 an hour, hoping that parents would invest, help them get through math, help them with reading, just the neighborhood kids in my area. Um, and I've partnered with a bookstore. Uh, Raised all the money, went to businesses, got funding, went and got door prizes. So we got this amphitheater in the park and then I got a few vendors. I charge them $50 to come in, and it's not this weekend Saturday, but it's next Saturday here in Columbus, South Carolina, at Throwood Park. But I just decided to go out and do it. You know, stop being a speculative, just like you decided to write books and get in the grind and develop and create. So it was just something I decided to do, and in turn, it's connecting with the community. It's giving them something for free, you know, this one time. But then it's hard work. Now to do it again, you would want to try to recoup some of those, you know, those skills that you know, connections you've made, networks you've developed, and skills that you've put to work. And but it's, you know, it's fun at first, but then I agree 100%. It's, you know, you should be compensated for anything, you know, that you're asked to do repeatedly over and over.
Yes, I agree. I agree. And just to let everyone know that the feed is for for 2 hours, so we have about 33 minutes left in the discussion. So, but yeah, man, just to piggyback, like I truly believe that when you first start off with something, you know, either do it at a really discounted rate, or even do it for free to build, saying your network or whatnot. But you make it known that this is a limited thing, that I'm doing this to get the word out. Um, with the hopes of getting paying clients or something in the future. Um, and so I mean, many companies do this, and so like you have a free trial period, here and there. Some will start off free, and then it may turn into a pay service or something to this nature. You kind of build your value. And I think fundamentally what really needs to happen is that a lot of us really need to just understand business in general. And when we understand business in general, I think that a lot of this will begin to change. Remember, excuse me. I mean, I was one who used to buy bootleg stuff, and my excuse was just cheaper. But then I started really looking at the quality of stuff, and then of course I became an entrepreneur myself. And so when you're an entrepreneur, you have a totally different mindset than the lay public, when it comes to your worth and your value of your services. And so you get a real eye opener, and that's why you try to create these networks where we're able to support each other in a way that keeps our businesses and things alive. And so now I'm guess I'm in the business of developing and maintaining culture. And that's what I'm trying. That's what I want to do. And because you can't have an economy without a culture, and the culture dictates. It shapes and inspires the creative aspect of your people. and it's your creativity that you sell to others. And so we got to remember, if we're watching a movie, if we're listening to some music, even if we're eating some food, you're buying other people's cultures. You know, so I go to a Chinese restaurant, I'm buying Chinese culture. If I go to a kung fu flick, I'm buying Chinese culture. You know, if I go to if I go see Transformers, I'm buying American culture. There's nothing but American values, American creativity, all up in Transformers. You know, it's to the point that people can sell their culture and not be ashamed of it. But, you know, when it comes to us, we want to be hesitant. So, like, I remember going to the grocery store and seeing Hebrew Franks. Now, what makes the Franks Hebrew that we have to attach a whole ethnic group to some hot dogs? You know, but it's Hebrew Franks, you know, and people buy it. You know, when you buy a suit, you want an Italian suit. You know, you want a car, you want a German car, or something to this nature. They put their culture and their ethnicity behind it. And if, you know, we create a culture, we could put our ethnic group behind it, and so we have a basis for just what Black Africa, what Sheikh Anta Diop said, in terms of, matter of fact, in terms of Black Africa, economic and cultural basis for a federated state. Now, for those of us who have Blueprint for Black Power, you know that I got all kinds of bookmarks in here, so y'all gotta forgive me as I open this book. But I want to say it's the third chapter. I'm gonna go to the table of contents real quick. The third chapter is titled "The Social, excuse me, and Cultural Origins of Power." That is a statement there. It says, you know, chapter 2 is the basis of power, organization, and ethnic resources. But then we get to the cultural origins of power. That means we can't even develop power without developing our culture first, because that's the source of our power. And that's what I'm saying here. Your culture is what gives you your industry. Now, hip hop culture, you know, is a good example of that. Now, unfortunately, we didn't control all of the businesses in it, but you see that hip hop culture creates industries. You know, it created other industries, and it fueled industry. And if we can, you know, control and be the vanguards of our own culture, I think that the economics part of it, you know, will continue to expand and solidify, and our dollars can circulate a lot faster. Anybody else got something to say?
How can we take the hip hop industry back?
Well, you know, being a hip hop head, I wish what's his name was on the phone now. This is up his alley. But
yeah, definitely.
you know, I'm one of those. Yeah, he's not even on right now. But you know, I'm a hip hop head, and I mean hip hop too. That was my identity. You ask anybody in my hometown, my nickname was hip hop. That's just what it was. Like, there's folks who still call me that. And I remember there was a point in my life where I didn't think of any other career other than hip hop. That was my career. And so, you know, I used to do it all, from b-boying, DJing, MCing, and all of that. You know, I didn't graduate.
Make beats.
Yeah, I still to this day make beats, just out of fun. I've gone into some other genres, you know, instead of hip hop. But you know, that's just from that hip hop culture, that I still consider myself a part of it. But you know, notice that I named a few of those elements of hip hop. What happened? See, what people don't understand is that a culture is never really one thing. It's never really just this one idea, and then, you know, everything sparks from it. It's always a coming together of things that makes a culture a culture. Now, one of the reasons that hip hop was a success to me is that it did something that is very African, and that is it paid homage to its ancestors and respected its elders. Ancestor worship is at the center of true hip hop culture.
Yes,
Because
sir.
without hip hop culture and the respect of the ancestors, the ones who came before us, and incorporating and remixing what they did into what we were doing now, hip hop would have not had that authenticity. It would have not have broken through the way that it did. Ancestor worship was at the basis of hip hop culture. But besides that ancestor worship, it manifested itself fundamentally in graffiti, in DJing, in MCing, and b-boying. And then the fifth element being the knowledge piece. Now I'm one of those hip hoppers that did all the elements and then got the knowledge bug really in college. And so, I've channeled my hip hopness for the most part into my scholarship, in terms of the fifth element. But the other elements are still there in terms of my graphic works and production and stuff. But hip hop needs to get back to its core elements. When you create a culture based on a certain value set and then you deviate from it, the culture can only diminish from that point on. All cultures have a cultural basis, a fundamental value set that everything is grounded on. And so without it, it loses its identity. And so when all of the hip hoppers wanted to start singing, hip hop began to lose its identity, because what were we doing now? Are we rapping or are we singing? Because when you start singing, then it's R&B, neo soul, and stuff to this nature. It doesn't become rapping. When rapping doesn't have the lyricism behind it, what are you doing at that particular point? These are the foundations that it was based on. It's not that you can't expand, but you have to always keep the core elements present while you expand. You can't expand and then abandon the core elements that gave the culture its identity. And when we had all of those elements together, that's when it became a thriving force, economically for us. Go ahead.
Would you agree there was a difference between before we were even calling it rapping, we would call it an MC, and the MC had to have a certain set scale. Now rapping, I don't even think that's something that we started to use. I think we called each other MCs, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can remember
Go ahead.
Eric B and Rakim. At first, we all thought Eric B was the rapper. It was always about Eric B, but it was actually Rakim that was spitting the lyric.
Yeah.
But my thing is, rap or hip hop came from the community. I can remember growing up as a kid. I used to help the DJs pick up his turntables and his rack of vinyl and carry it to the park. And we just sit there while he mixing on his turntables, and dudes would just come out and start rapping at the park. It just came from the people. What we have now is manufactured in studios.
Yeah.
That's why
they don't even have DJs. That was not the country wisdom. It was the DJ was first, and then if your man had lyrics, you would put the man on, and he became the MC. Now you got just the dude who goes to the studio and has a producer. Well, like, we lost the DJ, and the DJ was the one who would put the beats, and the beats had the ancestors, it had James Brown, it had all the samples that you could bring the old to the new. I mean, man, we doing bad. We got a one-man team now.
Right.
But just to kind of piggyback and tie this all back, what basically y'all are saying is that, one, we had a rites of passage in hip hop, and we had apprenticeship, and these are fundamental things. In other words, you had to earn your stripes. You had to go back and develop value, and that's what I was talking about earlier in terms of your volunteerism. In terms of the apprenticeship, you're developing value for yourself. Now that when you step on the scene, you have others who can vouch for you in terms of your value and your worth, and now you can demand that people pay you, as a DJ, as an MC, for the skill set that brings in the crowd and brings in the money in terms of the event or whatnot. And so all of those elements, are fundamental, just cultural elements. And the technology now although on one hand is very good, now people don't have to do that volunteerism. You know, you can just make a video, make a beat real quick, and bypass all of the rites of passage that was, you know, you had your gatekeepers back in the day, you know, people who were
Yes,
doing
sir.
it before you gave the nod of approval. Now you can skip them and just do your thing and just put it on YouTube or whatever, you know, and it has its pros and cons. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
And if I could add, like the question was, what can we do to take it back? To build on what you were saying, Asar, teaching you what it was all about, the rites of passage, and how to do it. And number two, we have to put the value back on. You know, tell us why it was, you know, what it was all about, the history of it, the love of it. And then thirdly, we need to correct what has happened to hip hop and take it back.
Mhm.
With that, I'm about to sign off.
Ashe.
And I appreciate your call. I'm going to in the chat and just let you know I appreciate it.
No doubt. But yeah, I mean, it all ties in. You know, the problem with hip hop is that, you know, again, it came. What made hip hop is that it was authentic and it came from the hearts and minds of the people, as one of you stated earlier. And you know, that's what I mean by the culture. And if anybody has been on my Facebook and, you know, or seen me type, so to speak, some conversations about culture, I'm always emphasizing this need to create our own culture, to make sure that it's authentic and that we're not, we can borrow from other cultures, use them as templates, but ultimately what we adopt as the collective culture has to come from us. And that's why hip hop will always be a great example of that. It came from our authentic hearts and minds. Unfortunately, you know, it came out of a process of lack, meaning, you know, the people who created this were not the wealthiest of individuals. And so, you know, when it came time to prove that there was a market for this, that people would pay for these hip hop elements, we didn't control the distribution of the products, and we didn't own any of the buildings or institutions that could house these things. And so even though we had the talent, we didn't have the means to bring that talent and solidify that talent across the world, in which of course the white owned corporations did. And so, you know, back then they had the CD presses, the record presses, you know, the buildings, the concert halls, and things of this nature. And so this is a lesson for us that if whatever we do, we need to control as much as possible. You know, again, the authenticity of the products and stuff that we present, and the distribution of our products and services. Because then and only then can we keep everything in house and stop. Because, you know, let's say we come out with a cultural product. You know, Walmart was selling kente cloths at one point. You know, you know, but we have to have a value system that says, what the hell? Why the hell would I buy some kente cloth from Walmart? You know, that's not made by us. Like, we have to have a sense of authenticity for ourselves that we measure, you know, and that goes back into the bootlegging thing. And so why would I buy a bootleg instead of the real authentic thing? Now, we don't, you know, we'll clown somebody for wearing some fake Jordans or wearing a fake Gucci belt,
Yes, sir.
you know, but why won't we clown these same people for having bootleg conscious products? You know, and it hurts, it really hurts us. Like, I remember hearing stories from people who I know in the craft who, I mean, elders who were talking about people were bootlegging Dr. Ben's books. Like, they would copy his books, reprint his books, and sell it without giving him. And this is before, you know, the modern technology, that they were bootlegging books of his even back then, so-called conscious people. Now, this is one of our major figures, you know. And so, you know, it goes back to the value set. Why don't we have a value set that says that we will only purchase the authenticness? We need to have it like, you know, you are whack if you got a fake Dr. Ben book, you know, that you
If you
didn't
remember,
buy. Go
you
ahead.
remember back in the day, brother Saul, you couldn't even bite. We were talking about early hip hop. If you were
Exactly.
biting somebody's lyrics, you would get called out. You'd be like, you got whack lyrics, you biting, you jocking me.
Yeah.
That
Exactly.
was a sense of like, you know what? He's biting so and so. He sound like so and so. We ain't gonna listen to that, but we're gonna let them battle it out. That was an early sense. Back to bootlegging. Bootlegging is like fighting. It's like taking my stuff and infiltrating, faking the funk.
Yeah. We had it. There was even a song "Faking the Funk" by
Yeah, yeah.
what's his name? Dang, why is his name
Um,
slipping? I have him in my mind. Lord Professor. I mean, Large Professor.
yeah, yeah.
Uh,
Extra P.
you know. Um, but yeah, and so you know, but then again, you remember, okay, hip hop, you know, it started, you know, just off as party music and things of this nature, and then when it became a solidified culture and more people got involved in it, you know, and it started becoming mainstream. Remember, there was a point in the hip hop culture in the '80s where, you know, people, the mainstream elite bougie folks are calling it a fad, calling it, you
Yeah.
know, gutter things and this. And so you had a period where everybody was just doing it for the sake of hip hop, trying to solidify hip hop as a legitimate art form. And so this is where all the creativity and stuff came in, because they were working for the ideal of hip hop itself. Not necessarily even for themselves, but they understood, in order for hip hop to shine, I have to shine, you know, in my
Mm.
own creative way. And your godhood has to shine in its unique way, because this is the collective individual creativeness that gives hip hop the collective its its spirit. And so if everybody sounds the same, then hip hop, the value of hip hop diminishes. You still trying to? It sounds like it looked like you're trying to get your phone together.
Yeah, I had to dip back into work, but I'm gonna step out. What you were saying was, if it loses its authenticness, and
Yeah.
that's what pretty much happened now. It's like we all sold out. Pretty much what happened is we don't have a DJ. You don't have to be an MC. You don't have to get the approval of your peers. It became rap music where dudes are just beefing for rap. Like it's I mean, I think it's going to take a strong underground movement to surface, and for the people to say, you know what, I want the real, I want the authenticness. Everything else is whack. Get back into work, but I'm going to step out. What you were saying was, if
You went out. You there? I don't hear his audio right now, so I guess I see brother Waju came through.
Yeah,
Uh,
hold up. Hold up.
peace. Um, we got about
I'm here, I know somebody else was trying to hear what I was trying to say.
we heard something, and then you went out for a minute. Your audio had stopped, and so, but we have. I don't know if the feed will go beyond, you know, the 2 hour mark that I set, but you know, basically we have 10 minutes left, and so I want to give some of this time to brother Uwaju, if you want to chime in. I don't know if you've been listening or not, to see kind of what we've been talking about,
Yeah,
but
I had it up I had it up on my speakers, but I was basically in and out, so I was catching bits and pieces. So I was wondering. I heard some of it, bits and pieces, but I was wondering if anybody touched on in terms of economics.
Uh-huh.
I was wondering if anybody talked on the like outer shell of it all, which is the link I posted up earlier in Diamond Rock Squad, which is the whole monetary system.
No,
dealing. Yeah.
No, we didn't hit on. We talked about certain elements of in terms of support for one another, but we haven't gone to basically what is economy and economics and how does money work.
Exactly.
So if that's something that you want to chime in, please feel free.
Okay, well, being that we only have maybe eight or so minutes, that's definitely a topic in and of itself, basically.
Yeah.
Because what is economy? How does it work? How does our economy work? And how it affects us? It seems like it's a big topic. But I will say that I personally believe that our behavior in as far as bootlegging, what brings it about, and a lot of other related things are a result of the economy, a result of the system that we are we're stuck in. We seem to be stuck in. So I think it's a result. I think it's a side effect of an illness, of the problems with the system itself. So I think that's probably maybe a topic of itself on its own.
Yeah, we may have to do something a little bit more planned. Again, this is just an off the cuff discussion, and so I don't have any notes prepared or nothing like that. I just want to get an experience of this at least hosting a Google Hangout Air, and seeing what the ins and out are from the back. But yeah, that'll be a good discussion in of itself. But I mean, go ahead.
If I may ask a brief question of importance, being the brother with Jaws on the line and Asar and other Kemetic brothers, just for the sake of argument, if a brother bootlegs a non-African, is that going against Ma'at? Just like we got brothers in the hood who sell movies, but we don't make those movies, they sell. Is that un-Ma'atic? Is that un-African for that brother to make his living and feed his family or bootleg movies?
I think so, because you still have an issue of karma. And so there's nothing in the Kemetic text that says only support your own. Now with Islamic hold on, with Islamic texts, that's that may be a little something different in terms of being able to keep contracts with others and things of that nature. Now people got to remember that if you can sell other people's products. There's nothing that says you can't sell it. Now what happens is that you will buy it at a bulk rate, buy it at a cheaper rate, and then sell it at a higher cost, at normal cost. So if somebody wanted to sell my books, I wouldn't sell them my book at the retail rate. I would sell it to them at a wholesale rate, and so they get it cheaper, and then they can charge more because they're selling it. They're a business selling it, and they get profit off of it. I still get a little profit, off of it, but they'll get, saying even more profit off it. I'm getting my books out. That's how you get it out. If you're really concerned about getting the stuff out in terms of the knowledge, buy it at a bulk rate and then resell it, saying at the normal price. You still get a profit in the cut off of it, and the maker still gets a profit in the cut, off of it. And so and that's assuming that you have like a video business or something to that nature. And so I don't see one just keeping it, not doing against you. It's just, matter of fact, I'll give you an example. In the biblical text, they're complaining about slavery in Egypt. There allegedly were slaves in Egypt, right? Now, Moses sets them free. And now they're on their journey to the promised land. And they're given instructions that they can enslave some other people, but it's against their law to enslave themselves. And so you have to wonder what's the logic and the morals of that. You just came out of slavery. Now you're saying that you can enslave other people, but then try to have a law that you can't enslave one another. You know, that's hypocrisy right there. And so it would be hypocrisy for, you know, saying us as well. Now, there's nothing that says as a conscious person that you got to sell all quote unquote conscious stuff. You know, you can be a conscious individual, sell some Toyotas. You know, you don't want no bootleg Toyotas. You know, the steering wheel all broken, cause accidents and stuff to this nature. You know, your consciousness is just your consciousness. But you want to sell. You know, you want to have a sense of excellence in even the stuff that you sell. And so you don't want to sell nobody no bad product. It's a bootleg video, some dude walking by the movie in the movie, you know, because you done taped it at a theater, you know, and something like it's not a high quality, authentic product. You know, so as a conscious person, you would want to sell authentic, high quality, you know, stuff because that's ma'adik, that's ikr, you know, that's excellence, that sense of excellence that the Commations promoted. Matter of fact, the word ma'at, is cognate in the Chiluba language, is called bulongo, or bulonge, or bulongu, and one of its definitions is excellence. In terms of goodness, quality, balance, you know, and things of this nature, one of its definitions is excellence. And so, I would argue, at least in a modern context, using a cognitive ma'at in the Chiluba language, is that excellence is at the heart of what you do. And so what you do has to be of the highest excellence, and what you sell and the service that you provide has to be of the highest excellence and highest quality. So, you know, that's my take.
Yeah, I mean, you basically said it all. I don't think there isn't any differentiation because you make the difference. Basically, if you take something out of the mouth of your fellow man or out of the mouth of children, et cetera, it speaks for itself. That's in essence what you're doing. Bootlegging, period. You know, you're disrupting someone's way of living.
Lovely.
So if whoever makes a product, movie, books, or whatever, and you bootleg, you're actually short-circuiting that currency flow, that energy flow, because really money is time, and somebody put their sweat, blood, and tears into something, and they're getting compensated for that time, and we cut it off by bootlegging. So technically, I don't think there's a difference, because like you said, it's karma, and karma is there. You know. So,
another thing, even on the consciousness tip, you know, it's the conscious people who are going to reinvest in the kinds of programs and institutions we need. If they can't get the funds to do it, if you don't support their work, they can't have the funds to actually do the kind of investments. So let's say, for instance, that Tariq Nasheed, you know, let's say he became a millionaire off of it, you know, off of Hidden Colors, you know, DVDs. You know, he now has enough funds to give a good amount, if he wanted to invest in the Umar School. You know, but if he's not getting any money for his product, he can't invest in, you know, saying the Umar School. And so, you know, when you bootleg or not supporting certain things, they can't in turn support other things. You know, like if you was to buy 100 of my books, you know, I may buy books for certain black college students at a HBCU, you know, or something to this nature. This is how the money circulates. You know, I can only give and do something large if I'm able to make that money in the first bit, you know. And so, you know, that's another side effect of, you know, supporting one another in terms of the business. And why we don't want to bootleg. But go ahead.
Now I was going to say something that's interesting, because I think that same thing is flipped when even in the conscious community, the person that's doing the works and they're still shrouded in mystery because of like for example hip hop. Because of hip hop, when entertainers are supported, whether it's sports or hip hop or whatever, when they're supported, you don't see it come back. Like you don't, you're supporting, you're going to the football games, basketball games, you're buying all the CDs, but you don't see a lot of it coming back or being expanded in, on a large scale, because there's a lot of people with big pockets, and we have a lot of issues that we could be doing a lot better on. Just like the clip you posted up with the Malcolm X speaking back, that's in the '60s. He was saying that the statistics show that we have a $20 billion, what was it, $20 billion per year
spending or capital or whatnot.
Right, and that's just in the black community.
That
So
was in the
imagine
60s.
what it is now. I think it's like 400 billion now, from what I saw before. So we have the money. We really have no excuses. So I think it's flipped with the lack of support, because even in supporting the black conscious community, where is it coming back? Where is it coming back? And then there's a lot of people who are sincere and have good intentions, but they may not have all of the steps, all of the foundations laid for them to even know what to do and how to go about doing it in a successful manner. So a lot of ideas are thrown out there, but they end up being temporary or they're failures. So I think that's something that needs to be worked on. We need to lay a solid foundation, so when we do support people, that the money that they sincerely want to put back into the community, that it's done in a way that we see results, we see fruition. So I'm just saying, that's just something that I observed.
Right. And whatever we do, it has to be organized. I know I keep saying that, but I mean, if you just study history, even the formation of the sun is just information that coalesced together and formed the sun. So whatever we do, we have to take ownership of it and organize it. Just like hip hop, we never did organize it, so somebody else came along and took control of it, because we didn't take control over it. And there is a consciousness community that's growing, and the information is out there. If we don't get control over it, somebody else will, and it won't be as powerful that we need it to be.
Exactly.
Right.
It goes back to that authenticness. It all goes back to when it's your culture that gives you your economic basis. I always say that a lot of times we have people putting the economic cart in front of the cultural horse. Your culture drives your economy, and you have to have this sense of authenticity. And so one of the things that, why we study history, we just don't study history for the sake that we can have debates and argue with some random cats. We study history because we were looking for examples of excellence to emulate.
Right.
And points of time in which to improve and expand upon. So when you read ancient Egyptian literature, they have a term called saruj. It's in a phrase called saruj ta. The root of the word saruj is what I named, my book after, Aluja. That's how you would say it in Chiluba. It's just rouge in the ancient Egyptian, but in Chiluba it's called Aluja. And you get this sense of the phrase is saruj ta, and that is restoring the world. And all of the pharaohs and whatnot would brag about how they improved on that which their ancestors built in terms of monuments and things of this nature, and or even just in terms of ideology. Like it's an expectation to expand what the people before them have done, even in terms of economics. Like I've opened new markets, I've brought in goods that no one up until now has seen before. You see this written in the literature, and so when I think about, like, for instance, when that, given that example that we had earlier from the brother from Burkina Faso from the TED Talks, he what he did is he went and got the information and came back to his community and then utilized that to build his community. And so, like, we have a group of individuals who will use their skills and get all this money. I'll stick with the sports, what Brother Uwaju was talking about. And they won't come back. Matter of fact, it's expected that a sports player gives money and does charitable work. But all the charities and things of this nature that they are involved in, or quote unquote white people's charities, is never you don't hear about a big school, a big basketball player or football player investing $1 million into the Umar school. Now, it's not even really the Umar school, but I forgot.
Right.
I know it's the Marcus Garvey,
Frederick Douglass.
Frederick Douglass, yeah.
Yeah, Academy.
Yeah. So, the account. I'm just saying the Umar school for now. The Umar, you won't see that, but it's big news when Dr. Dre donates that amount of money to a white university, one that he's never even actually been in, and studied or anything to that nature. And so, like, there was rifle. Some people was like, why didn't he donate that money to a HBCU? Even though technically a HBCU is still a white school, but it just shows our priorities. So here's a brother, Dr. Dre. You come out of the hood. That money, you could have built a music institute in Compton, for that amount of money. But instead, you gave that money to a white institution, and so he doesn't really understand. I know he understands about getting money. He's now a billionaire because of his Beats by Dre. But that just shows you the mentality that a lot of us are when we get that money. Let me have $1 billion. I would not donate to the Red Cross. I ain't donating to none of that. Everything that I do is I'm building for us in the community. Matter of fact, I'm going to have fundraisers specifically for us in the community.
Right, but that goes back to culture. That goes back to what you were saying. It's part of your culture. That's why you would do that.
Yeah.
So if you already have that cultural identity, it's easier for you to do. I remember, I think Carmelo Anthony, I forgot how much he gave to Syracuse. It was a lot. It was millions he gave back to Syracuse University. And I'm like, man, you only went there 1 year. How was Syracuse so important in your life? What about something in your neighborhood that helped you, the parks you played in? But go ahead.
I'm sorry, cut you. You have to remember that a lot of us we're not, when you get into when you making that kind of money, sometimes we look at it as a sincere gesture, like, oh, it's from the heart or whatever. But a lot of times it is business.
Right.
It deals with taxes. It deals with just strategy, business strategy, financial strategies, with why some people, not everybody, but why some people do what they do. So some of these moves we may be interpreting as, okay, they're given to this institution, but it may not exactly be that way behind the scenes. It may just, to help offset some tax liabilities and things like that. So,
no, I understand. I understand that fully, but you see how the system is set up. That the strategy helps promote them, helps ensure their power, to keep them in power. It's time for us to build our strategies that at least help us control our resources.
Yeah.
Right.
But the question is, do we have resources? What are really our resources? What do we have access to in terms of raw material?
Ourselves. That's all we got right now.
Exactly. So if we have to build up, there's no reason why if our only export at this particular moment is our talents and creativity, then at every level we should be controlling that. It
Right.
should be us, in the distribution end, in the creative end, all of that. Like we should be our own gatekeepers, when it comes to this stuff.
Right. And basically all we have right now is the consciousness community.
Hmm.
And if we don't get control of that, it's gonna slip away. It's gonna get overtaken by who knows who has an eye on it right now. But we do, and where I see us taking control is in the community homeschools.
Uh-huh.
I think that's a big movement that's gaining steam right now. They have two here in Dallas called African Care Academy and the Uhuru Academy. I mean, they're doing their thing as African centered. Now they call it homeschool, but it's actually a school. Um, that term helps them without being part of the Dallas school district.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but the curriculum is really good, and that's the move I see. Homeschooling our children, educating our people, like you say, on culture, on and that's the move. That's what we got to get control of. We got to get all this information and organize it. I mean, we have so many different people across the country with so many different ideas. Is actually weakening the movement. A thing I like is when you build in a vineyard, the first 3 years in that wine vineyard, you let the grapes grow wild. You let them all grow wild, all the vines. And in that third year, you start cutting, you find the strongest vine, and you start cutting off all those other vines. So all the roots and stuff will go into that one vine and make a one strong vine. And from that one strong vine, that's where you get your wine from. Well, it's time to start cutting all that other stuff back. All the other ideologies, it's time to cut those back and pick that strong vine, and then we all unite to that vine and build from that.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. See, the problem with us, it's not necessarily with us. It's more so an issue of circumstance. Is that I don't know where you're at in terms of your location in Yame, but I know with Brother Lee, he's in New York. I'm in Texas. Brother Uwaju's in Atlanta. And so we have just amongst us, you know, three separate states that aren't even close to each other, by any stretch of the imagination.
Right. I'm in Dallas.
Oh, well, you're
I'm
closer.
in Maryland. I'm in Maryland right now,
Oh,
and I'll
okay.
be in Pennsylvania after this.
Yeah. So, I mean, either way, we're in different areas of the country, and so if we wanted to create a community, we couldn't do it because of circumstance. And so, and I'm pretty sure everywhere we are, it's still a minority of us, even in those communities. Because this is what people don't understand. The so-called conscious community is very, very small. And so, uh, you basically, like, I'm pretty sure all of us on Facebook, we got at least 200 of the same friends on Facebook. you know, uh, because the community is so small, you know. Um, and so, like I was having this discussion with a Muslim brother, a brother who's in the Nation of Islam, and so he was trying to brag about, Nation of Islam is basically 80 or 80 plus years, in the game, and so And so he was complaining about, you know, the direction of the conscious community, and, you know, without a real good sense of history. And so, you know, if I can take a little bit of time to explain this briefly, in my spiritual circles and in the Bantu circles, you know, we understand these kinds of things in terms of hunger. And so we understand it as there's a lower hunger and a greater hunger, or a lesser hunger and a greater hunger. The lesser hunger can be satiated by taking care of one's immediate needs. We're talking about food, clothing, shelter. The greater hunger is that hunger for things beyond food, clothing, and shelter, in terms of knowledge, in terms of spirituality, you know, and things of that nature. That spirituality, the sense of trying to connect with a higher being and things of this nature, is what, you know, is this is where the knowledge and all this other kind of stuff comes from trying to satiate the, or satisfy the greater hunger. So now going back, in the 1930s, when the Nation of Islam came about, they were trying to deal with some immediate needs. Now, Islam was the framework, you know, to try, you know, for the disgruntled, you know, Christians who knew something about Christianity wasn't right, but they were trying to take care of immediate needs. So food, clothing, and shelter, and then dealing with white men and the white people in general. And so because they were able to deal with it on that level first, they had a greater impact when they came out. Now, when it comes to the African-centered consciousness, this doesn't come until later, really until the 70s. You know, you have a black consciousness political movement in the 60s, but, you know, that's when they're first starting. These are the pioneers who are fighting for the African studies, Africana studies programs and things of this nature. Then comes the 70s, when we start really learning about Africa and people start taking on African names and all of this other kind of stuff. The hunger that we were trying to deal with then didn't start off with immediate needs, because by this time, by the 70s and whatnot, we done broke down the barriers that immediately, you know, barred us from gaining access to food, clothing, and shelter. And so for those who didn't come the Nation of Islam route, at this point we done, you know, made it to college or whatnot, you know, we're trying to deal with the greater hunger. And so we've been just trying to figure out who we are, trying to figure out African spirituality and knowledge and culture and things. And so that was the bulk of time spent from the late 70s on into the 80s, you know, and even the 90s. Now we're just coming into a consciousness where we're trying to merge that African culture and African consciousness in an economic way that we can take care of food, clothing, and shelter. And so, you know, it's coming, you know, saying 360, but we had to go through that spurt to really be able to study specifically, you know, what it is that made us tick in terms of being African. What did it mean to be African and human in a modern sense? And now we're able to take that information, and now we need to put that in a way that we can utilize our spirit and create an economy for ourselves, you know. But one of the things that we learn about African culture is that you had to be in a relatively accessible space, you know, because a lot of what we're talking about was really the culture of small villages. You know, it's different when you're dealing with a polity, but we're not dealing with a polity where we were in control of the government. So now we have to do something from scratch, which our ancestors did not have to do. How do we create an identity for ourselves and a culture for ourselves amongst a group of individuals who are scattered across the United States in a place where we don't control the government, we don't control the resources, and, you know, we don't have really collective communities in this sense? So that's a question that we have to ask ourselves when trying to build what we're trying to do. And so, what does y'all take? Y'all there?
Yes, sir. I'm here. I'm listening.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I am going. I'm walking back and forth. I don't want you sit there talking to yourself.
Yeah, I'm listening.
I'll end this in it looks like they let us go over, and so I guess it stops when I stop it. But I'm gonna give it just
I
10
think
more
it's up
minutes.
to, I think it's up to 8 hours or 7 or 8 hours. If you let it roll, it'll keep rolling. You could take it off air, and then the hangout will still stay. It's just off air.
I
But
see. Yeah, I don't want to hold y'all up if y'all, I know everybody got family and one brother at work.
yeah, see, I'm walking back to the warehouse. No, but that's good. That shows dedication. I think we should do more of these hangouts to
Right.
one, put a face, even though my camera's not on, put a face behind the names and some personality behind the names, because that kind of takes away the tension of sometimes building on social networks where
Right.
we'll have a disagreement, and we'll and trying to type, it seems real stiff, and it just seems real stiff and cold. So these hangouts end up being a lot. We could benefit from these hangouts.
Yeah, most definitely, most
Yeah,
definitely.
But
I appreciate y'all two brothers too, man.
I'm sorry I couldn't hear you.
I was saying that I appreciate brother starting with y'all. When y'all gave me that little sparring match, the little boxing that I occasionally, when I say some stuff that's not right and exact, I appreciate brothers taking out the time to correct each other so that we could grow. Even though, like the brother was y'all saying, it could seem stiff on Facebook. When it comes to moments like this, where somebody could take personal time out their life to show their commitment to the upliftment of each other, I personally myself, I appreciate it. Coming from a background of being with a bunch of people doing negative things to now having a handful of people who's really having to strive to band together to uplift each other and to take out personal time as sacrifice.
oh yeah, yep.
No doubt, man. We appreciate you, man, for even uh, even giving us the feedback and giving us the experience. As I say, sometimes our experiences ain't just for us. There's others watching. Who are looking at us like. If y'all could see, really the kind of emails and inbox messages that I get, that from people who are reading my comments but aren't commenting at all, just on Facebook, or people who have watched a video on YouTube or something to this nature. And the same kind of emails that they're sending me, I'm sending to other folks who have had the same kind of, you know, um, impact on me. And you don't always necessarily see it because they're not necessarily going to comment on it. But like I remember, like I think I posted about it. There's a brother who I talked to who's from Central Africa, but he lives in Israel at this time. And so he was talking about the stuff that we talked about on our blog, on the blog talk radios and stuff to this nature. And I didn't even know anybody in Israel was even paying attention to us. And so how we even conduct ourselves in public says a lot, and in terms of who's watching and what they get out of it. And so some people will get um, they get stuff out of how we even handle opposition, and disagreement and things of this nature. And they take that as an example and they build off of it, and they incorporate it into their life. And so, for us who have studied a bit and have a little bit more information than the average, I think that's part of our responsibility, not only to provide information, but to conduct ourselves in, brotherly and sisterly manner towards each other and not be afraid of correction, if our comments are not right and exact. So
Yeah, I remember you posted that up there, and it kind of just reiterates how we're being watched. And it reminded me, I had posted up how in Japan they look at they have something called black culture, and to them black culture is hip hop culture, and they actually emulate it, and I mean down to a T, and they think that that is what we're about. They, you know, by name and everything. So it just shows that we're being watched, and we could be the beacon of light. And this kind of speaks to the battle rap debating circuit that's going on, that people are that they're watching also, and they're looking at how we conduct ourselves, and not only how we conduct ourselves in real time, but then as time goes on, what are the results? Because the battle rap scene has been going on for hard for a year and a half now, 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
So really, what are the results? You have people who have a following, but the following is based on, you know, how popular they are, how charismatic they can be, and they can be sincere, but then where's the effectiveness of their work? Where's the methodology applied to discern fact from fiction, and then taking the facts and apply it and putting together a system, a workable system where you can see results that has a definitive goal and not just out there and swimming around in the ocean and trying out, experimenting, etc., putting together packages and living off of them. You know, that's what it ends up being. And it's not like you can't hate, because a lot of people have to eat, a lot of people got families, and they're dedicating their time to it. So be it. But in the end, where are our temples? Where are our per unks? Where are by whatever culture, you know, per unk, or you know, whatever the central thing is for whatever culture, but where are they? You know, it's been going on for a long time. You
Right.
know, so we have a responsibility. We need to actually kind of revisit these discussions also, and basically pull away or reassess it and take away what is valuable. You know, even the old debates. Then somebody can transcribe it, do some fact checking, and then put forth the question, okay, how is this usable? You know, let's start designing a curriculum. Let's start designing a spiritual cultivation system, or perfecting the existing one. You know, whatever.
Right. That and that's what is needed before they debate. You know, put your article out. Let's study your article, and then you debate it. And then once the debate is over, can you implement what we just debated? That's how you can tell it's just what they're doing now is just entertainment. And if it continues, the people going to get frustrated. That's the problem with it. I understand they got to make their living, but if it continues like it does now, people are going to get frustrated and start turning back to the streets. The information has to produce productivity. If you don't have productivity after all of this information going out, um, you just get frustrated. You just get angry young people with a lot of energy and nowhere to put it. That's what I see that is heading, unless you start having responsible debates with action coming behind it. But I want to say something that you had said earlier, sir, about you know, we all in these different spots. But that's the beauty of this internet we own right now. In the blueprint, uh, Amos talks about, you know, we got to get a control of the media, and this is the media that he didn't have, that we now have. We can use this medium to, I mean, we can go across the world with it,
Yeah.
but the right type of information has to get out. Right now, I mean, you got the people in New York, and I know they love their people, but it's very immature. It's very immature.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's well, you know, there's some things we got to consider as well. One, you know, the question is it the debater's job to then follow up with all of the programs and everything else that is needed after the discussion. I think we have a hero complex. We have a savior complex. Those residuals from our Christian and Muslim backgrounds, to where we hear what needs to be done, but we're waiting on the savior,
Right.
somebody else to come do it for us. And that's why we're always asking these questions. You know, why aren't we, or why don't we have da 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 da? Now again, you know, I come from a different school of thought, and I come from a different perspective. You know, in the tradition in which I belong, the ideas that come to your head, we believe that they were given to you for you to execute. If somebody else didn't have the idea, that means it wasn't given to them for them to execute. Now, what it seems like, if I was to take that tradition and project it onto others, or to make it a normative and argue it as a truth, if this is a truth, then it would appear that we're trying to take the wisdom and the insight that is given to us and then give the responsibility to someone else, when that's not the case. And so, you know, we got to understand that, you know, the research and development department is not the, you know, the construction department or something, whatever.
Right.
You know, it's not the
Right.
marketing department. Those people on stage are research and development. They're mainly the researchers. What you're supposed to do, if you're not the researcher, if you're not going to spend the hundreds of hours going through papers and, you know, developing theoretical frameworks and things of this nature, trying to get the information and put it in a usable way that that is usable for the community, then what you need to do is to learn how to be inspired. This is the fundamental reason, one of the fundamental reasons why Africans encourage the arts. There's no such thing in Africa as art for art's sake. The arts were designed to bring out and to keep a creative mind of the person. Because when you're creative, you have a better tendency to probably think of solutions to problems because you have a creative mind. And so that's something that was, you know, in just based in that's embedded in our culture. That's why we played the dozens with each other, to be quick-witted. You know, we don't know the benefits of it. We think we're just ragging on each other, but it's really to develop a creative mind. That's what the arts are for, so that you have a creative mind, that you can think of the solutions, creative solutions to your problems. And so that's why we have art, and we get our members of the society into the arts. So they have a ready mind. So more specifically, so they learn how to be inspired. What I'm finding is that a lot of us don't know how to be inspired. And what I mean by that is to, like, every time I hear something or I see something, because I'm still into my arts, I'm still into my graphic design, my music production, and stuff to this nature. I'm in a creative field. I find inspiration. I do photography and all of that. I find inspiration for things everywhere I go, because that's just in the mind frame that I'm in. And so the people who are always making these complaints usually are in a creative mindset. And so if somebody else isn't doing something, then even just by business logic, that's an opportunity for you to do something.
Yep.
You know, that's how you build businesses. You build a business based on a gap somewhere in the economy. There's a service that needs to be present, or a product that needs to be present in the community. And so you build your business around it. So what you know, if you're not a debater, and I'm not talking to anyone specifically on this line, I'm just saying in general, if you're not a debater, if you're not a researcher, then you should be able to get the information yourself and then find a creative way to make it applicable in your community, and do some test runs with it. And so it's not their job. They did their job. They put the information out there. And so it's kind of like nature in general. So you notice nature. I'll take two examples. One of pollen with flowers, and the other one with sperm, since they basically are kind of the same thing. You notice that with pollen and sperm, only one of each can fertilize the ovum or the egg. But the nature sends, hundreds of them out there, thousands or whatever out there.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a greater chance that one of them at least will find the target and create the life that has the potential to create. And I argue that that's basically kind of like the universe. It's a whole bunch of people. There's a whole bunch of information and ideas being thrown out there. And the reason why we have this mentality that it's already out there is because we believe, for those who believe in God, that God has already thought of any and everything that could possibly be thought of. You only discover what is possible by the study of nature. You can never invent anything. And so, we are vessels, antennas or receptacles of inspiration. And so what our knowledge is supposed to do is to teach us how to translate inspiration into experience. And so there's hundreds of thousands of ideas being thrown out in the universe, hoping that somebody will catch it and move on it. Just like, when you ejaculate, it's thousands of sperm, things being shot out there with the intent of one of them just hitting the egg. And so, that's kind of how we got to see it. And so, it's whoever's supposed to do it will do it. And so you just got to, if it's something that you think that you can do, just do it. Don't wait on anybody. Just get the inspiration and move forward with it. And that's all you can do. Don't wait on anybody else to do it.
That's basically that's what quantum physics is.
Mm-hmm.
That is, you have possibilities, and then you have probabilities.
Mm-hmm.
With all the different possibilities out there, what is the probability in your environment that you're going to bring or you're going to manifest one of those possibilities? So, so what you're saying is backed up with physics and, like you say, with pollen, sperm. But yeah, I see what you're saying. The information is out there. But it works like that. Whoever is best prepared will bring forward the probability. So it's in our preparation that we can bring it forward. If we're not prepared for it, we're not going to accomplish it.
Brother Saw, I know you got a lecture on that dealing with quantum physics as it relates to the world
that
of
goes
known.
to that liberal art.
What'd you say? Say that again.
I'm sorry, my bad. I was saying that I know that Brother Saw has a lecture series on that dealing with quantum physics, and I believe relating to the waters of noon, if I'm correct.
No.
Yeah, it's all kinds of stuff, I'm sorry?
I said that would be a good one. A good, as far as none and quantum physics and consubstantiality. I think that would be a good. I don't know if you did one before, or do you plan on doing one? But that would be a good subject to touch on.
I touch on it, as you know, with and I'm still in development of this in terms of the Madhu Mandela Institute. The idea is to relate the Meta Nature script and concepts, and just Africa in general, their concepts with modern science, because much of what is discussed in these texts is you know, correlates very closely to the major themes of modern science. And it was just the science of their day. And the languages demonstrate for us that this is what they had in mind. And so my inspiration for the Madhu and Della Institute was this text here is biomimicry. And it's Innovations Inspired by Nature by Janin Banus, if I can read that correctly backwards. But all they're doing, again, this is a multi-billion-dollar industry that I'm holding in my hand here, where all they do is imitate nature in terms of design and things of that nature. And the psychology and the reasoning for doing this is what I would call African religion. Like the basis of African religion, the basis of meta nature is everything that this woman is talking about in this text. And so, you know, what I want to do is get us into biomimicry and start developing, you know, eco villages and sustainable technologies, and basically get us into the sciences by appealing to our heritage, you know, starting with the meta nature. And so, like I have this other book here called, I had to print it out from an ebook, Beyond You and Me, Inspirations and Wisdom for Building Community. And this is it's just an excellent book. But a lot of it in here deals with building eco-villages and things of this nature. And so I want to combine all of this, and all of this and what I'm combining is ultimately the Madhu and Della. And that's just one of the ways that you would say meta nature in the Chiluba Bantu language. And so with all of that said, of course, it forces me to really go back over the sciences and try to tie the sciences into the meta nature and the philosophy and things going on there. And so on that level, and just on theoretical physics, you know, the meta nature tells us a lot that, again, mirrors what we find in our modern studies. And so I'm not saying it's an exact match, but the fundamentals, the fundamental theory, that's all, you know, a theology is. It's a theory, you know, based upon a scientific theory of life, based upon what they've observed, creatively told, so that it remains in the minds of the people from generations to come.
I think
go ahead.
I think that's a very important point. I think that's very fundamental to the underlying theme across the continent. And I think anybody sinking their hooks into African traditions or religions, quote unquote religions and things, they have to understand that. You know, I know that you mentioned like the so-called religious texts are the world's first scientific journals. And there's a lot of, like you said, biomimicry. Even with the Dogon, I forgot which book I read this in, but even the Dogon, the way they even build their homes is even if they themselves may not know it, but they're instructed through initiation. By the time they take on a wife or a mate, they build a house, a home, and the home is built according to their cosmology. You know, the way that the house is made, the look of it, the angles, and so on and so forth, the yard, the structure, the blueprint, etc. So I think that's really important, because a lot of Kemetic texts, people look at it as religious. You got some people looking at the deities as aliens, and some people just don't get a clue that how Africans, the method that ancient Africans took to record reality, to actually practice ontology, to categorize reality and put the deities as the head of these categories. And then you have these subfolders, you know, of all this natural phenomenon from how we behave as far as the human being, how we behave, how we develop physically, how we think, you know, the whole African psychology. You know, I think religion Well, spirituality in African psychology is kind of synonymous. You know, the whole study of the spirit, the mind, and why we do the things we do. You know, why we behave the way we behave. You know, so I think that's very, very important because we have a lot of ideologies out here, and I think somebody mentioned it earlier. The different ideologies will dilute the progress. It'll dilute the potency of what we have in front of us, so that even though we're sincere, we're trying to move forward, we're trying to progress, but it's diluted, so we only get so far. So going back to basics, to square one with what you just mentioned, I think that's really, really important. I think that should be pushed at every chance we get.
Exactly.
Right. If we build the culture from natural principles.
Mhm. And that's the aim to where, like I think, like, my strategy is a little different than a lot of folks who have come before me. Like, I think that our problem is that we want to use the labels that our ancestors used when trying to develop something here. So you have a whole bunch of people, with these comedic organizations who really aren't grounded in the indigenous cultures. They're trying to create something based upon what they've read in text. And so they're using words from a language that they really don't understand. They don't understand where these terms come from. And they think that they're really being comedic by attaching comedic names to certain things. Not understanding that, at least I argue, at least in the upcoming book and in one of the articles that I've recently written on the word Kemet, that the word Kemet itself has to deal with, is actually two different words, period. From the same root, two different words. One is dealing with nation, the collective. The other is land in terms of fertile farmland. So in order, at least from my research, in order to be a quote-unquote Kemite, you have to be in control of a nation or you have to be a farmer. And so you have a whole bunch of people running around with Kemetic names, don't even have a garden. Where?
They have weeds in the yard.
You know what I'm saying? It's like, no, that's what a Kemite is. It's technically a person. Matter of fact, which is why, and you can get this book for free. I had to print mine out, but it's an ebook that you can get, and it's free. You can distribute it. You won't be bootlegging nobody. It's called Land and Power: Sustainable Agriculture in African Americans. Again, it's Land and Power. This was written in 2007. Land and Power: Sustainable Agriculture in African Americans. Trying to get, understand the relationship of land to power. And, of course, going back to the land, there's another book here I got. It's called Rooted in the Earth: Reclaiming the African American Environmental Heritage, by a sister by the name of Deanna Glave. Deanna D. Glave. And if she hears this, I'm just murdering her name. But again, this is Rooted in the Earth: Reclaiming the African American Environmental Heritage. This is the stuff that makes you a Kemite in the literal sense. Biomimicry makes you a Kemite. Creating eco-villages and sustainability and products and things of that nature. This is what makes you a Kemite. This talk about, Ra rising in the east and all this other kind of stuff. I mean, that's secondary. That's just creative ways of describing some certain scientific phenomenon. But at the basis, you have to be a scientist. You have to be, as matter of fact, as an African American Kemite, if we want to use that word, as an African American Kemite, you know who one of our greatest deified ancestors should be?
George Washington Carver.
George Washington Carver.
Exactly. I was just going to say that we're on the same page. That's by far his whole plants, the whole his understanding of all of that, and what he produced. You know, that is a clear. That you're right. Absolutely right.
If we're gonna deify, we're gonna raise up some ancestors. Talk about the ancestors. That should be one of them. That should be the head. He should be the Ra, the Ptah of our pantheon.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know.
That's real important. That's really important. And that kind of goes into something I had mentioned, maybe another hangout for sure. But the titles that we're using in terms of priest and priestess, and even spilling over to our common talk now, it's becoming even more popular to call each other king and queen. And I have a personal view based on my observation and just related issues that I really think that that's doing us more harm than good.
Exactly. Because again, in order to be a Kemite, in order for you to be a priest, people don't forget what a priest is. A priest is an individual that has been given the rights and responsibilities to maintain a particular part of the state, to organize and rule and maintain a particular part of the state apparatus.
Hmm.
That's it. And so if you are a priest, but you don't control, you don't head over anything about the state, you're not a priest. You're only a priest in name. You know, in terms of tradition.
Right.
It's not really. It's a priest had a job. You had a priest who was the overseer of agriculture or something to this nature. If technically a priest would be a police officer, an educator, a teacher,
Scientist.
a governor, a
Scientist.
a scientist, you have to be you would have to be the leader of an institution. You would have to be a major player in the institution that helps to run the state. You can't be a priest in my eyes. And here's the. Let me back up a little bit. In order to be a priest in my eyes, the people have to recognize you as such, and understand what your responsibilities are to them as a priest. And so, we get these initiations and we come back here and they're not recognized in the community.
Hmm. Right.
You call yourself a priest. I mean, that's not what that was for. It's just all of those and more of those kind of positions that we mentioned. They help to maintain the state apparatus. If you're not maintaining the state apparatus, and we don't have a state, so you can't maintain the state apparatus, which means you can't be a legitimate priest, at least for us.
Right.
Okay, well, I got you guys on this little talk. People need to understand how Kemet was formed, and I'm not talking about Kemet, but what brought the people together in the now and begin the different nations, and how the nations was formed. Is there a book out there that teaches that? I'm talking back 6,000 BC, 5,000 BC, that explains how those nations came about.
Well, there's one text that you can read. It's called Early Dynastic Egypt by Toby Wilkinson.
Hmm.
And all it's dealing with is the pre-dynastic phase and the early dynastic phase.
You said Toby Wilkerson?
Wilkinson.
Wilkinson.
Toby A.H. Wilkinson. Early Egypt. Early Dynastic Egypt. Routledge Press. And matter of fact, this is one of my resources for my talk on Monday. But what he's arguing here is fundamentally the state came together, possibly because you really don't have, there's no text telling you why Egypt came together. So you can only kind of piece some things together, based on some evidence. And so what the strongest evidence is that they probably wanted to control the trade that was coming from, they were basically the middlemen for inner Africa and what we call the Middle East.
Right, and that's what I always believed it was. That was the battle to control that trade, all the way up to Sumer.
Yeah, they wanted to control. They wanted to control the access to those goods, and that's why That's why the Egyptians. See, the Egyptians were good at, they were good at getting the so-called southern Egyptians or the Delta area and suppressing them. But then they tried to go further down into Sudan, but then kept running into problems there. But the only reason why they wanted to go into Sudan is to have access and not have the Sudanese, the Cushites, and others be the middlemen for the trade, coming from Punt and other areas in Africa. And so it's all about trade. It's all about business. The spirituality and all that stuff that comes later. It's probably there from the beginning, but in terms of state formation, that access to trade is the evidence seems to suggest that was a major component of it. Now it could have been. Now what I'm gonna also be arguing on Monday is that it possibly could have been an issue of, because remember the desertification of Egypt brought a lot of communities together, and when you bring a lot of communities together, there's often conflict over resources. And so, like Tashaka Zulu, if you know anything about Tashaka Zulu, this is the same thing happened in Southern Africa, where the Nguni tribes were bottlenecked in a certain region in South Africa. They began fighting amongst each other for resources, and so they wanted some peace, but none of the leaders were strong enough to bring peace until Tashaka Zulu rose up the ranks. And his solution was to bring together and create one nation, which ended up being the Zulu nation. And he gave them basically two choices. He's like, look, since we're fighting anyway, you're either going to peacefully become a part of this conglomerate, or we're just going to have to do this by force. And so some did it peacefully, others Tashaka had to come in and do it by force. But this is how he created the Zulu nation. And I'm thinking this is the same thing for like Narmer and the people before him,
Right.
the Scorpion King and stuff like this. Like, look, in order for this to work, we're going to have to become one people. And so that could be a good discussion in of itself. Like, are we going to have to take some heads?
Right. But it's not just in African nations. Every nation was like that. The Russian Revolution, the French Revolution, the American Revolution. It's like, okay, I got to get control of our resources. And if anybody gets in our way, they get their head chopped off. That's just basic becoming of a man. You take control of your resources. Whatever resources you have, you say, hey, this is mine, and I'm not going to give it away. And from that basic premise, everything seems to flow. Even your hunter-gatherer groups, I'm pretty sure they started to divide on lines where, hey, you don't come in my territory, I don't come in your territory.
Yeah.
I'm going to hunt and gather over here, and I'm not going to cross in you, some type of agreement. And
but even the hunter-gatherer societies were a little bit more peaceful than the settled folks.
Right.
See, with the settled folks, it's, with more and more people, you got to remember, when you're settled, you have, hunter-gatherer societies are necessarily very small. They don't have these big societies. Settled communities, they develop enough food to where they can sit and expand. And so you have these population increases. With population increases, you need more land. you know, to house the populations. And this is where the conflict starts between the nations, between the groups, because now you're trying to expand into quote unquote other territory, and this causes conflict. Or now you're trying to seize, you know, access to resources, which was free for everybody, but now you're trying to control it. This was the issues dealing with, you know, what I argue with ancient Egypt, but definitely in South Africa amongst the Zulus, and even with the Chinese, because the Chinese had basically the same thing. China was 4 different nations, you know, until they had to fight. That's what that movie with Jet Li was about. Hero, I think. If y'all in the kung fu flicks,
Definitely.
you know, that's what that story was about. You know, the uniting of China. You know, there was these 4 warring. There were already 4 warring nations. So they did basically what the Egyptians did. So when the Egyptians went to war with somebody and took those captives, what did they end up doing? Annexing the territory into the Egyptian territory, and culturalizing the other group into becoming quote unquote Egyptians or Kemites.
Assimilating, yeah.
Doing the assimilation. So that's exactly what everyone else did. They said, you know, in order for us to stop this fighting, we have to come together as one unit.
So it seems like that's what we need to do now.
That's why I asked the question. Do we have to really just literally take some heads and force everybody? I don't think we have to do that at this point.
I think the Amarat is taking heads already. I think as far as philosophy and culture, we have to do what y'all doing. We have to keep continuing to debunk misconceptions until the last man standing is the one that's fit to be the head of a confederate. It seems like with all these little groups, with no disrespect to any brother from the Nation of Islam, Moor, Science, Christian, Muslim, you have to keep going forth and finding who's capable to be the head of the next confederation. That's what we need to do in America as Africans in America. We need to keep taking heads in a sense.
And it may
not fight.
And it may not be like, you know, that kind of gets back into the savior complex, but it may not even be a single person. You know, it may be an institution. It may be an administration, because just like the Pharaoh or the Per'ah in Kemet, the word Per'ah shows the progression of, you had the Nisut Biti, and then it became, you know, more so the Per'ah, which was the administrative house, or the entire, you know, household or the administration, similar to how we say White House or the White House administration, or whatever, Obama administration. So it may not be like, you know, people are looking for a singular, charismatic leader, you know, person that they can like and judge and whatnot, but it may be an institution that's going to have to come in.
Right.
That's
ideology.
Yeah, that's the ideal of the African American Culture Development Project. That's basically the aim. And I wanted to take a different route than what the previous cats have done. If you notice, all of the previous movements had a charismatic leader, you know, with it. Whether we're talking about Marcus Garvey, whether we're talking about Elijah Muhammad, whether we're talking about Noble Drew Ali, whether it's Malcolm X with the OBU, you know, the Black Panther Party, or something to this nature. And it's always been, you know, or whether Farrakhan and the Nation of Islam, it's always been about what this one individual had, you know, was doing, and then dictated to the rest of the organization, and then somehow the community was supposed to adopt and be under that head.
Right.
And so, you know,
that don't work. By all the leaders that get killed and all the people that get hung up on these leaders, at this point in 2014, we got to figure it out that it can't be one charismatic leader.
Exactly.
Oh, it can't. And plus, you start suffering from the illness of living in the mind of that person. You know,
exactly.
and I think we have to, you know, it's going to take a team effort where there has to be a built-in embedded checks and balances, right in the DNA of whatever this institution that you know that come about. It has to be embedded. There has to be some safety stops within it, within the DNA of itself. And you know, back in ancient times, I think they had it where, you know, based on circumstances and survival, and like you said, acquisition of the trade routes, for that period of time, they may have needed, you know, they may have needed a leader. But you know, the Nile is very, very long, very big, and even then, you know, we kind of misinterpret that too. You know, we'll say the Nisubiti, and you know, we know a lot about them because of the resources that was available to them for them to do their job. But I mean, they had a whole army of administrative people. You had the governors of each nome or sepat, and then you had the scribes, you had the officials, you had the visors, et cetera, et cetera. So you know, the responsibility goes on to one person. But even back then, they had a body that was at work. That
Right,
was a
right,
machine. It was a machine that was at work.
right. And if the great house didn't do their job, they got taken out quick.
Right. The pharaoh was actually, that was really a position of burden,
Yeah.
because the wealth of the pharaoh was out of necessity for him to carry out the function, but that was a heavy burden because you had the responsibility of the life of the entire nation. You know, the pharaoh was responsible for the Nile flooding, for the invasions, for protecting the people. You know, that was a very heavy job. You know, we like everybody. You know, it goes back into what I was saying earlier. Everybody want to call themselves kings and queens, but do you really want to hold on to those responsibilities? How you gonna say king and queen, but yet we got this person being killed in a chokehold, or
Right,
our people
right.
being attacked, and we're being what do you call it? We are occupied. We're on occupied territory. You know, where are these kings and queens doing their job? You know, so, and that goes back into us properly defining these terms and using them properly. I think it's to our detriment. You know. Um,
Now, a book I recommend, because this is foundational to what I'm doing with the African American Cultural Development Project. It's this book called Mbongi, an African traditional political institution, a Eureka to the African Crisis by Dr. Kimbwandende Kiabonseki Fukiao. So you always hear me talking about Fukiao. That's my man. And so, there's a portion, all it's talking about is the political institution in the traditional Bantu, village or whatnot. And so there's on page 67, he starts talking about the difference between the pyramid structure, which we find in the United States, if you can see the image here. And so that's with a head at the top, and then everything kind of trickles down at the bottom like that, versus a horizontal, rulership and organization, which you kind of see by this graphic, here on the following page. And it's this model that I'm using, to basically state everything that you're talking about in terms of the culture, to where it's like it's not me. Like, I'm not going to be promoting it like it's me on my it's my thing. It's about me. It's going to be the people, the collective. We're going to have, like, for instance, with the African American Adinkra Project, there's going to be 12 elders that are going to be the judges of the sacred symbols. There's going to be 6 female, 6 male elders. You're not going to know who they are until after the judging is done. So none of y'all be trying to call them up if y'all happen to know one and get your entry, voted on or something to this nature. I'll be the only one who knows who they are. But in general, it's going to be a council of 12. 6 in the bylaws is going to be, it has to be 6 women and 6 men. In terms of the seats that are taken. So it's balanced right off the bat. In terms of the kind of organization, but even still, it's going to be broken up into regions. So it's going to be 6 regions: northeast, northwest. Northeast, southeast, north central, south central, northwest, southwest. So if you can imagine this, the United States broken up into 6, kind of equal boxes, so to speak. From there, the kinds of ideas, like for the Adinkra project, is going to be taken from individuals from across the United States. And so when we introduce these signs and symbols to the public for them to freely use, they should be more adapt to using them because they come from different African Americans from all different walks of life that contributed to this. And so at each step, at each project that we do, the collective African American Americans get to participate. And it's not, like with me being a graphic designer, I can come up with all the symbols myself and give them the meanings, but they won't have as much meaning, more meaning than if it came from the minds of the people themselves, and we just gather them and use them, and then disperse them accordingly. The next one is going to be the African American flag project. So we're going to come up with an African American flag, and it's still going to be the same democratic process. And so the people are going to design flags. We're going to have 12 elders judge, and come to a final decision, and that will be the African American flag. And so it's
get rid of the red, black, and green.
No, that's the Pan-African flag. We're talking about something that's specific to us. And so what I'm dealing with here is that we need to develop our own identity so that when we go out onto the world stage, we're not looking like lost bastard children. That is looking like even to Africans as our parents. Those Africans who are living on the continent right now aren't our parents. They're our cousins. They're our brothers. And so we should come to the table, like fully in stock, fully locked and loaded in terms of our identity within the greater African, cultural identity. So just like you have the African in general, the African, then you have the Yoruba, then you have the Akan, you have the Zulu. They're all still African, but they have their own identity that gives them salience and symmetry within the space in which they're at. We need to do the same thing. And so they have their signs and symbols, their sacred symbols. Matter of fact, and Yami, has one of the Adinkra symbols for the Akan as his avatar right now. That clearly identifies with the Akan people. Even though, we use it freely as Pan-Africanists, it's still an icon thing. So when we buy stuff with it, we're supporting the iconic culture and supporting that. But what about our signs and symbols? What do we have that represents our values the way that they have symbols, the way the Egyptians have symbols, the way the Zulus have symbols, the way that the Yoruba have symbols, in terms of their art? This is how you create an identity and a culture. And so instead of me just being one person to try to think of everything, I lean on the community. I just help organize it all, but it's you the one who ultimately decides how our culture, develops. I just provide the framework, and then we go from there. That's something different than anybody has ever done. They try to come up with everything and then hope that everybody just adopts it. And so it's not an issue of me. You may be upset one day that I get drunk and crazy and start dating a white girl. Then everything that's that we did up to this point is now up for question. But if it's a communal thing, well, it's just that one crazy Negro. We can still keep moving.
Exactly.
You get what I'm saying? Regardless of how crazy I get at some point. And that's what I mean. There's something that survives beyond me, and that people, because they're so invested in it, the community, that they will continue to strengthen it and expand it, for years to come, without it being ideology about me.
Right. That's why Pan-Africanism is still moving, because they developed an ideology that was above Garvey, above Du Bois, above Nkrumah. It's an ideology. So you're on point with that.
Yeah, I think that's very important, and we could look in, from like you said, Noble Drew Ali, And that's how come I kind of cringe when people even today when they try to do this conversion, whether it's online or in person, and they put a lot of emphasis on the person, the man. Like you got people that will talk about the more Science Temple of America ideology, but instead of pushing that, they push Noble Drew Ali more. You know, our prophet said this: Noble Drew Ali, Noble Drew Ali, Noble Drew Ali. Almost like they're force feeding, shoving this down your throat. And I have respect for the ancestors who deified things to where it becomes an abstract category that they pushed. You know, it's not a person that let's push Amun. You know, now Amun becomes this abstract type of thing. So it's not really on a person. So Amun can prevail for decades. You know, beyond one individual person. You know, and I think that's real.
You there? Did he freeze up?
They don't have these fundamental African ingredients and carrying them out. So yeah, there you go. So you know, you have people who like you said make up everything. They basically become a dictator. So if they become infallible, or fallible, I should say, or do something wrong, get caught up, then you know there's a great falling away because you're like, well, wait a minute, you know, if they're like that, then everything else is questionable. Because you know the saying, once you tell one lie, all your 10 other truths become questionable.
Right.
You know,
right.
so if we deify concepts, that will take the burden off, and then doing exactly what you were saying. I think there's a combination of a lot of things that can go in there. You know.
Matter of fact, you also have to put in.
Oh man, my
structure.
sound. I'm gonna have to reset. Y'all stay tight. I'm gonna have to go out and come back in.
All right, no problem.
Or the night before.
All right.
You still on live, so man, this gonna be a 7-hour hangout. I'm gonna have to pop back in.
I'm a close it. You
2
know,
and 2, like they say.
I'm gonna really close it this time at 11:30, so that's gonna be like in 13 minutes.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to interject that the you also want to in the organization schema, you also want to interject the idea that what we create can be improved upon.
Right.
But
that's scientific methodology right there.
You know, that you set the structure to where people can't just change it willy-nilly. You know, like with the U.S. Constitution, we understand that stuff changes and stuff needs to be improved, but they're just not going to make it easy for that. You know, every new office member comes in and they just change the whole structure. And so, but you have to have an idea that this can be improved upon, you know, with the years to come. And so that's where a lot of these groups and institutions lose out with me, because when they promote the person, and like for instance, when you're in the Nation of Islam, can't nobody do better than Elijah Muhammad. He's the greatest. You can't add on to what Elijah Muhammad has done. It's impossible. And so if what Elijah Muhammad has done is so complete and perfect, then you have lost the value of the organization, because as things change, inevitably you're going to have to adjust, you know, your philosophy and your structure and things of this nature to be able to meet the needs of your time.
Right.
And
that's
the
how
knowledge
nature works.
And so, you know, that's one of my gripes with just the Abrahamic traditions. You know, you can't improve upon it, allegedly, according to them. So it's perfect. So we find flaws in it, oh well. It just got to stay there.
Right. It's the same thing. I'm in something called the United States of Africa Revolutionary Party. And we follow the ideology of Kwame Nkrumah and Kwame Ture. But I mean, that's back in the 70s. And I always say, okay, things have changed now. Socialism is not what's happening. It's not the thing right now. You're not going to get people into that old time socialism. y'all got to come up with the times. But the elders are so stuck on it,
Mhm.
and it's dying. It's dying off because there's no new ideas being interjected into the ideology, and its effectiveness is wearing off. And like you were saying, whatever it started now, it has to have that basic framework where you can add new information and improve on old ideas. So you're right.
Should be no.
Exactly. Say it again.
There should be no ceiling. If our ultimate cause is to be like our deified ancestors in the heavens and in the stars, there should be no cap. It should be infinite potential, constantly growing and evolving upwards, not regressing.
Right. Right.
Our fixed ideology saying that nobody can do better. I mean, we have a lot of herbalists now, but none of them were better than Imhotep. I hear people talk about Layla Africa, and we give him his respect. But Imhotep set the cap. We haven't had anybody come across better than him lately.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had to dip out and dip back in. But another thing I wanted to say was a lot of the political structures or the community structures were based on some type of cosmology as well. You know, so if we iron out and get that solid bedrock cosmology or understanding the cosmology or a cosmology, because all over the African continent, they pretty much had the same cosmology. It was just expressed differently because of the environment that the people were in, or you know, the actual icons in their environment that they used to express it, and then their livelihood. But it was basically the same cosmology. So if we identify that, I think that will be the kind of common theme that we'll have with the continent and even over here in America. But we express it. Obviously, our expressions are going to be different, and they should be, because we're so-called African Americans, and we have a different experience.
Yeah.
So our expression is going to be different, but the seed, the root, should be identical to the same root that was done to develop the African nations, you know, in the past, in ancient times.
What would be that cosmology you think that we should all should study? Should it be something like the Septepi? I'm not sure if I said it right, but what cosmology should all African-centered people know? Because I'm interested.
Well,
Well,
no, I was just going to say that once you can see how the different expressions are really different expressions of the same thing. Once we can do that comparison of the differences and then the unity that's underlaying all of that, then that becomes the blueprint. So it's not so much studying, okay, just Kemet or whatever. It's all over the continent, but we have to study many different ones to see the different expressions, but trace it back to that common root, that common cosmology, because obviously, you know, the laws of nature are the same all across the planet. You know, it's just different climate, tropical versus Arctic, et cetera, et cetera. And this is where it's expressed a little differently, but the laws are the same. That's what defines a law. A law is something that's immutable, you know, perpetual, immutable, et cetera. So if we narrow down basically these fundamental laws, which becomes the cosmology, because cosmology is just simply a ordering type of system. That's what the word it means, and that's what they did. That's what happened. So we can study many, and I would suggest, you know, anyone that resonates with a person, you know, but ultimately you have to study more than one. You know, even multiple disciplines. Like I know Sarah Miltep deals a lot with linguistics. Linguistics fills in a lot of the gaps from archaeology, paleontology. So, you know, we're going to have to mix and match different disciplines to come to this root. But that root needs to be found and ironed out, and then that becomes the blueprint for what we do here. But we just express it different. You know, I mean, that's just my personal take on it. You know, that's just my personal take.
now, what I would add is, more specifically, when you're talking about a cosmology, you got to understand that the cosmology is not rooted in myth. Myth is rooted in the cosmology.
Exactly.
What we see in ancient Egypt is the creative storytelling of what they understood of the universe at that time. If we're going to build a cosmology, it has to be grounded in solid science.
Exactly.
And
That's
so
why I said laws.
it's from there you get your creative folks to think of stories on how to teach this very technical knowledge in a very comprehensive and creative way.
Yeah.
That's what we're doing here. So you would study the ancients for an example on how to do that, but you wouldn't try to build your cosmology off of the ancient Egyptians. We've advanced a bit since the ancient Egyptians, because if you look, for instance, if you read all of the old cosmologies, there was only two spheres. There was the heavens and the earth. There's always a circle divided in half. Well, we understand the cosmos a little bit better than that now. We have satellites that we can see far, into the universe. So we know about other planets and what the stars are and all of this other kind of stuff. The radiation, cosmic energy, and the infiniteness of the universe and all of this. All this modern stuff needs to, we had the quantum physics in terms of the details. That's why I always encourage people to read, just for the people who was, looking at it, The Pale Fox by the Dogon. They have surpassed the ancient Egyptians in terms of a cosmology. There's similarities, but you can tell that they've improved upon this, throughout the years. And created something that is unique and identifiable to them. But is based on an understanding of biology and the universe itself. And it's just told in a creative, artistic story. That's where your hip-hop would come in, to be able to tell our cosmology in a creative way.
Mm-hmm.
Our artist, our 3D, Brother Uaju does 3D rendering. We can get some money behind him. He can do some whole 3D films, along with other talented team of, 3D designers, to be able to tell these creative stories in a very unique way. And so just saying that to say again, that you ground your cosmology on actual cosmology,
Yeah. That's
and then
that's
from
a,
there, go. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm saying we're saying the same thing. I'm saying that's what ancient Egyptians did for that particular time. Like the priests, the so-called priests were scientists. They had a very what's creative to us, but it was basically the business of the day was on how they recorded and retold the stories and documented the stories. When we say something's documented or the invention of writing and recording is synonymous. To record is to store, is to save something, to be built upon. Not to save and put it away and not be touched, but it was collected and stored to be built upon. So we'll see these different so-called cosmologies and different gnomes, but these were scientific pushes of scientific information. So we do that today. That means we have to be science literate, as well. And a lot of people are not trying to put in the work, and we have to admit that the quote unquote we're lazy. And out of this laziness, we're coming up with these quick fixes, these band-aids, these packages that people are following behind, and then it just ends up being a temporary thing. So, we got to change the mind that it's going to be some work. It's going to be some work. We have to plan ahead. Like it's going to be like maybe a generation or two.
Yeah.
Before this really takes off.
Oh yeah.
Now, before anybody says anything else, I'm gonna wrap it up here. So I want to give y'all the last word. But before then, I just want to thank y'all for joining in this dialogue and engaging in this conversation. And I want to thank everybody else who are listening or maybe seeing this after the recording. For staying with us this long, and we plan on doing having some more conversations in the near future. So if y'all want to say some ending comments, I'll start. Well, on my screen to my left is Brother Lee. Then we'll go with Nyame, and then Brother Waju can close it out. But thank y'all again, and y'all have the last word. So go ahead, Brother Lee.
I just want to say thank you for taking the time out for allowing this to happen, for making a space where we get together and hear from brothers at different levels of information. I want to say thank you to you and Brother Wajah, Brother Ubuntu, and just for taking time out.
All right.
All right, it was good talking to you guys. I enjoyed it. I hope we have more like this. It was really productive. You can hear that we really care about our communities and we want to see it improve, and that's what I like. There wasn't no bickering or fussing, and I hope we can just continue to do this and incorporate other people, incorporate other ideas, and until we get to that point where we can teach our children. And I think it's going to be a generation or two, but it starts with us. It has to start here, because if we don't do it, the next generation falls behind. So looking forward to hearing from y'all more.
No doubt, good brother. All right, Elijah.
I just want to say I want to nominate Osar Imhotep as our first king. Nah, let me stop. Just go against everything we just talked about.
Right.
No, I appreciate Osar Imhotep starting the hangout. I think we should have more. I think we should utilize this technology, and I just want to give a big up to you, Osar Imhotep, for raising the tough questions and actually having information to actually build on, and not just raising the question and it kind of just sits out there. And then as far as your works, the books, I encourage everybody to get them. I even plug that for you, because seriously, that the work speaks for itself. Sometimes it may get a little technical, so people definitely got to get their research game and their linguistic literacy up to par. But I think that's a needed element, and I support it 100%. But I do think that we got a lot more issues to discuss, and that's it. I think this was good. I still want to discuss the economy. What it is for the economy and these titles. These king and queen titles. Does it hurt or hinder our communities? So.
Again, we could set up something for next week if need be. But again, thank you, brothers. It's hard to have a dialogue by myself. So this sense of community here is much needed. So this is. Thank y'all for again coming and providing y'all insights. We're plugging. Again, I deal with meta nature, but I don't teach it a lot. But we have a brother on here who teaches the meta nature, and that's Brother Uwaju. So y'all need to check out meta. Well, there's a dash in there. The MDW. -ntr.com, metanature.com.
Yeah, that's it.
And so y'all can get up on your meta nature game, so we can have some deeper conversations about what our ancestors through the ancient Egyptians left for us in terms of right conduct, how to run the state apparatus, how to defend yourself and deal with your enemies. All these different types of questions that we have to confront, as people trying to build on their tradition. And so I thank y'all again. I thank all the listeners, and I'm gonna close out so we can chill with our families. I need to call my girl. You know how late it is, but I'll holler at y'all later.
All right, hold up.
Peace.
All right, peace.